Why We Bleep is sponsored by Signal Sounds. When I get the itch to make techno, it's a hard one to scratch. I've tried many places, but there's only one for me, and it's called Signal Sounds. It's a shop in Glasgow where a team of beautiful humans, headed by the wonderful Jason, have completely, massively and entirely got their shit together when it comes to stocking the most interesting gear and getting it to you fast. They ship worldwide within 48 hours in most cases, and their roster is sexier than a badger with rockets on his underpants. They've just got restocks in from Instruo, the Erica Synth Techno Systems in stock, and I heard that Richie Hawtin's got 5. And God bless him, Ross Lamont just made half a dozen 6U10H4P travel cases, and as you know, he's getting out the game. And if that wasn't enough, he's got himself a whole load of Dupford, never heard of it. And mannequins. Don't understand it. Yes, they've got everything a growing human needs other than haggis. Ha, only kidding. They've got haggis as well. So get your butt and put it on the internet and go to signalsounds.com. The website again is signalsounds.com. Why We Bleep is also sponsored by Obsidian Sound. Did you want to finish that record? What record? The one you were making the other day. Why don't you finish it? Oh, but I don't know if people will like the mix. That's true. If it's a shit mix, you're in trouble. If only there was some kind of mastering service that also offered a kind of polishing advice stage. Oh, wait. There is. Obsidian Sound is a mixing and mastering studio run by modular artist Nathan Moody. Nathan's approach is to help hone and polish independent electronic music so it has the greatest possible impact on the listener. Nathan gives feedback and advice on your mixes and general recording practice so that the files you deliver to him are the best they can possibly be. So if you need a critical, objective ear to polish your next release and then master it, drop by and visit him at obsidiansound.net. And if you mention Why We Bleep, Nathan will take 10% off your next project. So for mixing and mastering, go to obsidiansound.net. That website again is obsidiansound.net. Why? Hello, my booty. How are you doing? Forgive the slight interruption in our normally scheduled programming, but I've been a little bit insanely busy moving house. I don't live in London anymore. I lived in London. It was nice. I enjoyed it. I'm in Yorkshire now. Hi. Welcome. It's nice, isn't it? I mean, you can't see what I'm seeing right now, but if you could, you'd recoil in disgust because although I am fully clothed, I am surrounded by boxes upon boxes upon boxes upon boxes and things just sprawled around because I have been completing a number of projects, and whenever I'm sort of in the burn, like trying to get something done, everything else kind of suffers, if I'm honest. Certainly just basic tidiness suffers. It's quite incredible. It's actually genuinely incredible how messy one human can be. But by God, the work is getting done. And in fact, 2 very major things have happened. One, which I can talk about, I'm going to talk about, is that I have completed an album. Yes, an album of music. Not just a person who produces videos, but also a person who produces music, which is a thing I've been doing much longer than I've ever produced videos, but you've not really heard it. So this will be interesting. And it's done. By God, it's done. For better or worse, abandoned. But you can't hear the music yet. You will be able to hear it soon, but bear with me. It's being mastered, actually, by Nathan Moody. Truly, I eat my own dog food. The person who is very, very kindly sponsoring this episode, and one of them genuinely is mastering my music, and I'm paying him to do so. Actually, for the second time, Nathan mastered my Data Cult audio podcast, and that absolutely banged when it came back. And he was absolutely rad. I mean, I've talked about this, obviously,
just now. But yeah, Nathan gives you feedback in terms of, you know, what you're doing. And when I was doing the album, you know, one of the things he told me was, he pointed out one of the tracks, one of the mixes I delivered in, and said, this is the one. Like, if you ever wanted a track that you can use as a reference point to say that this is what a good mix should sound like in the room where you mixed it, it's that track. And that was incredibly valuable information for me, because when I was sending him the tracks, half of what I was hoping for is just a third opinion or a second opinion on the tunes, because you've listened to these podcasts, I talked a bit about it, but like, I don't trust my hearing. And I've been in a transitory state for the last few months, moving around. So I've had to pull apart my space. So I don't trust my space. All I really trust are headphones. And you shouldn't trust headphones entirely when it comes to mixing either. So I'd be fair to say I've had no like yardstick. So it's incredibly reassuring to sort of send the files off and just think, oh God, please don't eviscerate me. I have someone say, you do need to change a few bits here, but it's largely good, but this is your baseline. That's really valuable. And so that's a thing. And actually on that front, when I talked about my hearing, I got there's a thing I want to mention, because if any one of you, or well, all of you are listening are affected by sort of inner ear problems from time to time. And when I say inner ear problems, it sounds like an ad. It's not. I just genuinely want you to know about this product. You go on an aeroplane, and when you come off the aeroplane, or when you're in the air, you get that whole horrible sort of stuck inner ear thing where it sounds really painful. You get like pain in your ears, and you have to chew gum, obviously, to try and sort of fix that problem. What it is your ears are not equalized. You know this, where what equalization really means, though, is that there's a cavity inside your, inside your head, inside your ear, nose, and throat. Basically, there is a valve called the eustachian tube. You have one on each side. And your eustachian tubes are the things that actually open up and equalize your inner ear, so that when you're chewing gum, the act of chewing basically pulls your eustachian tubes open, and it forces them to open and to keep equalizing. So by chewing gum, if you have normally functioning eustachian tubes, you're constantly, every chew, you're pulling them open and you're equalizing. That's what's happening. I, however, was born with a cleft palate, where you get that thing, you get kind of a hair lip, they call it, where, you have like a gap out of your lip. Well, I actually didn't have that. I had it in the back of my mouth. And it meant I was literally born with a hole in my head. Welcome. Turned out all right. But unfortunately, what that can lead to is sort of inner ear problems later in life, because, you've got a slightly messed up inner ear. My problem had been struggling to equalize the pressure in my ears. I had a cold. You can actually hear it in the podcast coming up. I had a bit of a cold. And I couldn't equalize my ears. And in fact, I've always struggled. And I bought a device which is called the ear popper. The ear popper. It was £99, which sounds like a lot. But what it does is it's basically just a little sort of electric pump that sort of steadily puffs air. And this is going to sound really weird and horrible, but you put that up to your nose, close your other nose, and then you're blowing air into your nose. And what you do is you swallow. And when you swallow, the air is diverted into your eustachian tube, and it forces the bastard to open. And it popped my ears, god damn it, which is amazing. So for £99, that's worth every penny. There is also a alternative product which is called Otovent, Otovent, and that is like £7, and that's basically a kind of a balloon and valve that does the same thing. So if you have kids and your kids get glue ear, that's kind of what this is designed to help them do, to help open up eustachian tubes and drain fluid out. I sound like a doctor. I'm not, so you should check with your doctor before using something like this. I checked with an audiologist at Hearology. Shout out to Vincent. And it is amazing, especially when it comes to mixing, because, I'm sitting there going, I don't know my room, I don't know my speakers, I don't know this, I don't trust headphones, and I also don't even trust my own friggin' ears. So nice to sort of clear out the bass lines. Anyway, highly recommend it. If you have trouble popping your ears, it's worth every penny. Buy one or try the Otovent. And then the other thing has been doing a video. Don't worry about it. You'll note I haven't been doing videos very much. That's because I've been moving, but I'm starting again. And I've just done a video on the Rebel technology Stoicheia, that's Greek, and tonic. And the Stoicheia is a dual Euclidean sequencer, and the tonic is an additive pitch sequencer. Yeah, where you feed gates into the module, and by feeding in gates, it creates intervals. In fact, it's exactly what I've been doing with my live system, where I've been combining two voltages together and subtracting as well, using a precision adder. The tonic kind of does that just in one module. It's really slick, and you use gates to do it, or you can push little buttons. So there's a video. Go and watch that. It is very weird. It's quite awful. The music is quite sort of like, I was kind of just vibing on, I've been listening to sort of the Autechre NTS thing. It certainly does not sound like that, but it's just that kind of, you know, hey, why don't we just go for the weird sizzling sounds from the cycle box and just smash a sort of, you know, brutal beat underneath that. That's enough. I don't need more than that. And some other fun stuff as well. There's some general CV doing piano, and the Lyra, Soma Lyra effects, which I've got, which is the sort of the Lyra's effects like delay section in a Eurorack module. And if you've seen the Soma Lyra or heard it, that will be a thing that you'll be interested in. It's a very, 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 very weird delay, where you've got like cross modulation or cross, you know, there's two delays, and they can literally influence each other. It's really weird. And it gets very crunchy and cruffy and fluffy and floofy and ploofy. Yeah, really good and distorted. So check that out. Check out the vid. At some point, we probably should talk to Ben. So let's. And who is Ben? Just in case you don't know, Ben Wilson is a man. Ben Wilson is a man from Bradford who is a fellow, this term, YouTuber. He's a fellow YouTuber. But, you know, we are people who make YouTube videos, and he certainly does. Man is extremely prolific. I genuinely don't know how Ben shoehorns the time in. I really don't. He is insane. But he's prolific. You will have probably almost certainly watched some of his videos. And his knowledge, I mean, this is the thing. I don't know if you've ever met him, or, you know, if you've spent any time or commented and he's replied, and he's just like, what you don't know about Ben necessarily is that, I mean, Ben's background is he's a drummer. He plays the guitar. He teaches drums. He is an extremely accomplished musician. He is an excellent drummer, like a really, truly excellent drummer, which are skills that are obviously employed in the production of electronic music, but are not, you've never watched a video of him playing the drums. Do you know what I mean? And he has a whole background where he's produced, and I, you know, I'm sure he will understand me saying it, or phrasing like this, you know, has reached a kind of moderate level of success in the sort of releasing dance music, which we talk about in the podcast. You know, but he's chosen a slightly different path. He teaches and he's making videos as a way of kind of reaching the world and imparting knowledge, but he makes music and he's very good at it. And if you've spoken to him, you probably ended up doing what I do, which is chat about just techniques and tips and tricks, and the knowledge just seems to kind of fall out of him. And so that's basically what we did. I wrote a load of questions, but I didn't really get to them. We sort of joke about that. We get to some, but it's really just one of those freeform episodes, but probably the most useful, if that makes sense. As in, there's so many things in this that I mean, I'm speaking for myself here, but are things where, as I was listening, I was like, must try that. That's a really bloody good idea. There's a lot of those sorts of moments. There's a lot of kind of information that just, as I say, just kind of comes tumbling out of the guy, because he knows everyone and he chats to everyone, and he's constantly trying to improve and, you know, improve what he does, improve his own knowledge. So we talk about that, getting better at making music. That's sort of the main thing. But also things like promoting. How do you promote your music and become known? We talk about going to Sun O gigs. Yes, Yes, mate. Love that band. Favourite synths? I actually did sort of pin him down on what's your favourite filter? Which is a question that made him balk slightly. But we did have a very grown-up conversation as well. And he does have favourite filters, so it's good to talk about that. Making sample packs? That's an interesting one. Trying to come up with 1,000 kicks. I'm not sure I can come up with more than one, really. Dancing around the living room as a kid. Talk about trendy mixing desks. We talk about mix referencing. We talk about feel referencing, which is a concept that Ben invents during this podcast. Man, so full of ideas and suggestions and tips and tricks that he's genuinely inventing things as we talk. And I hope you will find it useful. I definitely have. So there's a number of things that I'm going to be, I've actually already started employing in my own music as I've been finishing off this music, as has he, and other things that I hinted at, which I'll let you unpick. So, without further ado, I give you Mr. Ben Wilson, aka DivKid.
What was it we were talking about before? Oh, the like feature creep thing. That's weird. What was it we were talking about? What was the thing? The Mozenzeef
modular stargazer.
Which is like a sort of like drone commandery sort of like box that just does...
Yeah.
Like it just makes noise. But the fact that people just like moan that it doesn't have CV connectivity, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that.
It's not the point of it.
No.
Like, clearly, they make these LED jacks that work like a theremin, and I think there's a white case one and a black case one. So, you know, one starts at high voltage and gets lower, one goes the other way. By default, that affects the LFOs, though, not the pitch, which is an interesting choice. I was saying this on Sonic Talk the other day. There's no way, bar the pitch knob, to control the pitch of that instrument.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much set on, there's the oscillator droning, tonal changes is what's going to happen.
Like people who don't understand...
But that's cool, though.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, but I can't play it with the keyboard. It's like, well, you're not meant to.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why doesn't it do this? It's like, well, because it's not designed to. Because that person has designed it not, like, that's not a necessary part of the whole... Yeah. It's funny. Like, people do have a sort of weird, like, people impose their own, like, interpretation of what something should be without giving it time, I think, quite a lot of the time. Yeah. It's probably because it's probably just way too easy to make a comment on the internet about something before you've had a chance to actually think about it.
But I looked at it and it's sort of super beautiful. It sounded great, but I walked away thinking, oh, it'd be nice if I could connect more stuff to it. But then having tried it, I was just like, no, that is that instrument. You just embrace its quirks.
That was
and enjoy it or not. I mean, everything's not for everyone. You've got to accept that. But I really like just the kind of vision of what that instrument is. I mean, you could resample it. You could just treat it as this just drone that you drop in a sampler or...
I think that's what Ebsidic was on about with the Bug Brand stuff, where he's like, I've got all of this Bug Brand stuff. I barely used it. But when I got that ER301 sound computer that samples, suddenly it recontextualized all this junk that I had lying around, because I was like, oh, well, I need like sample material. So I'll just like plonk my pile next to it, record in a load of sound and shove it back in a box. And he's like, he's saying words to the effect of, I was glad I had it. I didn't suddenly think, this has been a big guilty waste of time owning all this shite.
But thinking of the Stargazer, Phil's got one as well. And I asked him about it because it's something I was tempted to get before I did this video and got one through from them. And he said, yeah, I've just sampled it. He said it just sits as beds and textures, and I repitch it in the samples. And it's interesting, Ebsidic's released that kind of techno-free industrial ambient album recently. Because that to me is, it's like the background of all his sets I've ever heard that's come forward. You strip the hi-hats and kicks out and it's like, that's all that stuff that... When people say they don't like techno or, no, I'm not into dance music or ambient art, and I'm like, but listen to what's going on. And they can't see past the kind of kick and hats. Yeah. And Phil's kind of gone, there it is. I don't know if it... I don't think it was but I don't know if he's recorded that way and he's kind of muted the drums as he's stemmed out of his live case and gone,
is it actually just his live
this
set?
just works. This just works.
Oh yeah, why not?
It's great, but it does just work really well.
I did have that, like, I was playing bits of a tune I was making, and I was just listening to the drums by themselves and just thinking, like, these are actually quite good, and like they're not enough on their own, but when you just think, like, when this is part of the ensemble, I lose a lot of. There's a lot of work gone into this element that you're not hearing.
Yeah.
Because it's only right that it's part of an ensemble. But you sort of think, like, oh shit, maybe I should just, like, I don't know, like, write a track as just drums only and then sort of work up from there. Because I always try and, like, shoehorn a whole track together from the very get-go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you want
I don't work systematically.
4, 8, 16 loop of the full thing.
Yeah.
And then you go back and strip out.
And then, like, reverse engineer that into the track.
Yeah.
But
you end up, while you're doing that, so you sat with a DAW of, 16 bar loop or whatever, you've got the peak, the full body of the track. And you go back and you make your intro that's just got a couple of elements. It's maybe sat on one note instead of the change. And you're like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's the dance music thing, isn't it? Like when you go back, I mean, technology's changed it, but when you used to have 8+ minute tunes for the sake of doing a really long, evolving, like 2-minute transitional mix, some of those bits were amazing.
Yeah.
Even the really simple, like, Dead Mouse, Wolfgang Gartner,
Dead Mouse 5.
Well, Wolfgang Gartner, those just big electro things. When they started, kind of, was that like 2008 maybe? And Wolfgang Gartner as well, his production is very good. But there's 32 bars of just drums. They were still doing this nice. Trancey techno. We want a big long bit just to mix into the next track. But they're just super simple drums, but they are absolutely slamming.
Yeah.
And you kind of miss that. There might be like a thumb click or a clap before a snare, and it all just like flams into the beat.
Yeah.
And it just shoves the mix forward. Really common techniques, but when you hear it in isolation,
the one where it's like, it feels like it's sucking into the snare, like,
one of those every 4 times round.
I sort of listen to that and I just think, like, you put much more work into your beats than I have. Like, I should really do some of that.
Well, that's kind of how the DivKid thing started. I started making cheesy trance stuff, to be honest. It's embarrassing. And there are releases out there under a different name that people will not find.
What's the name?
No, I'm not going into that.
That's fine.
The name was, if people are really interested, and it's one of those, like, I say it's embarrassing, I don't really care because I was a lot younger. Bon Lewis, which is an anagram of Ben Wilson.
B-O-N-N.
Yeah, I thought that was like this cool European...
Bon Lewis. That's a nice name. It's
all right. Yeah, anagram of Ben Wilson. I thought that's all right.
Yeah.
So that I put... And it's super cheesy trance, a lot of it. And some of it... The only embarrassing bit is that it was released... And this is the label's fault, the kind of gatekeeper's fault of these small US labels really putting it out. The production's not good enough to be released.
They shouldn't have just let. They should have.
No, but you go back like 8 years ago in where I was. You
didn't know as much.
No, I didn't. So you're just like, yeah, if someone's going to release it, then you listen back and you're like, it doesn't really stand up. But it improved over the time that it was me and my friend Andy doing the DivKid stuff. We had Carl Cox supporting our tunes for a while, and release we were putting out. And,
that's outrageous.
And we were just putting a ton of stuff out. We started a separate, it's very much like Berlin techno now. I think it's called Dark Elements, the sub-label that we had to our kind of main, called Lungfiller Records. Stupid name, like DivKid.
Where you were did as a kid.
I can't even know where that came from. The image is Andy that I used to produce with. His cousin's a tattoo artist. We were just
is this that weird, like, the U-shaped the character thing?
Yeah, it does have a whole body and a backstory. There is this whole DivKid family tree and all the stupid stuff we used to run with. But we were putting out a lot of really dark techno for a while, and someone else ran with that. It was kind of successful enough to say to someone else, you can run a sub-label under our brand.
Because you had like this iconography and branding sort of element.
Well, that was all very different. Being kind of minimal dark techno stuff, it just didn't suit the stupidity of the.
You weren't allowed to be playful. You're supposed to be like, wear all black and look cool, and like your like band photo will be like you'll be blurry and shit. Yeah, like you can be like
and just grungy, like black on dark grey textures for artwork and stuff like that. Yeah, try to just be cool.
A scratchy font that you've downloaded off the internet.
But that started as I had someone saying the other day, like, how do I get any traction? They were on about making videos, and they were asking how DivKid started, and I said that we ran it. We were lucky; it was the placement year, like the sandwich year on our degree uni. So we just did like 10 well 6, 10 well 7, 6 days a week for a year, which is why the production just shot up in terms of our quality, because it was just like...
You mean you just pounded out tunes?
Yeah,
constantly?
we just sat back in Andy's parents' basements or my bedroom back at my parents' place. We were just like, we're not going to work. Not getting a job was a really wise idea. It was like, we can move back in with our parents for this placement year, which I don't think either of us particularly wanted to, but that's what we did.
Yeah.
We can just focus on this. And that was the drive for it. All the placements at uni were rubbish, but we knew we wanted to do a placement. And we both gigged enough and been in studios enough that it was
So
like...
you said you did a placement, you basically took the year off. You didn't go to a place, you just said, no, we're going to work on the skill.
It was a placement that it was at Huddersfield University, and you could do every 2 months, I think we used to have to go in and speak to kind of business advisors. And there was very small grants, you know, a couple of grand here or there, or you could put forward a promotional plan. There was only us doing any audio, and then we'd be in these kind of almost like uni lectures or small seminars, and people making jewellery or T-shirts or whatever. And we'd very little work to do to gain that like qualification, as it were. But for us, it was this year, that's all we're going to do.
That's amazing though. What a like opportunity just to like, I always think that like, what if I had all day to just make music as if I was like a professional musician, you know, like in the good old days where you'd sort of, where you could make money from music necessarily, and it would be like...
We made little. We only made anything because of the volume. Our initial plan and why we were allowed to do that as uni, we could have just taken a year off and done it anyway, was you to put a plan together. It was very kind of Dragon's Den, the start of it, without the entertainment value or the bad puns from that guy. But it was, we'll put a single out every month, and then in 12 months, we'll put a 12-track album out to kind of collect what we've done. And it just really quickly got ridiculous. And that was the kind of start of any professional sound work.
When you said it got ridiculous, you mean actually it was successful?
Yeah, but in terms of the amount we were doing, just tons of remixes. You know, each week, you know, on a Monday, I might just spend 9 hours writing personal emails to blogs and DJs. Because copy and paste jobs do not work.
Yeah.
Spam email does not work.
Yeah.
So if it, you know, when Carl Cox supported stuff, you make the effort to send it through to his agent and say, thanks for playing this. And when you send the next track, you send them a personal email.
Yeah.
It was great that you played this remix of our track on episode 349 of your podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
We've got another track from the same artist we think you really like.
It's flattering.
And then there's a bit, and then there's a little bit of copy and paste, you know, the links, and this is the little mini press release. And but it was that, and I didn't think that's what we'd end up doing. But you quickly realise that putting things on Beatport, iTunes, and just copying to every email address you can find does not work.
It's bobbins.
Yeah.
Well, no one likes anything. We're the same. We get those emails from people just like, you know, mail bombing you for whatever reason. Yeah. Why would you respond? Yeah. Well, it's like doing a CV. It's you customize it to the company, don't you?
It's, of course. But the kind of, I'm kind of forcing my story on you with this conversation.
No, you can force it on me, mate.
But it was really naively, I think we were 2 releases in, sent an email to Dom Kane, who I'd seen in like Future Music Magazine, Computer Music Magazine. He had some Loop Masters sample packs out. So I would really like you to remix this. And that seemed like a massive jump up for us, which it was, but he wasn't this like real top tier kind of electro house artist or whatever. He'd kind of, he's kind of on that bubble. And he'd been doing sound design for Moog. I think there's a lot of his presets in the Slim Fatties and things like that. Worked with Steve Duda and Deadmau5 and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, yeah, I'm just going to a gig in Russia, but had a quick listen, downloaded it on the plane. I like it, so I'll remix it. And we were just like, what do we do? We're going to have to send him like a contract. And we were just like, we've got 50-50 on it. That's normal, right? Which it is, and that worked. And he liked the track. So he did a remix, and then I think he said, where did the drums come from? Like, I've been making my own for a while, trying to do it all like as unique as I can. Oh, could you make me some? How many have you got? So I think I got 20 kick drums or something. It's like, could you make a few hundred? And I was like, yeah, all right. So the first thing then that I ended up doing for Loop Masters was this pack called Drum Construction, and it's over 1,000 single shot sounds.
How do you even like do 1,000 hits? Is there a point where you just go, have I done this? Or
well, it was
this.
You know, I can't remember the numbers, but it's like 400 kicks, 200 snares, 200 and it's at that time where, I mean, looking at it now, it's kind of stupid, but packs, and the packs are still sold on size. I've had offers recently for sample packs of, can you make us 2 gigabytes of sound?
Yeah.
It's like,
I get that from a like marketing perspective.
It's that over 2 gig of sound.
Yeah, you have to sort of say that
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's meaningless. It's like, because you can't say they're really good, because obviously everyone's a really good. Do you know what I mean? It's like you've got to say, you've got to have some other metric.
But the drums, it was, I'd loads of record. By this point, I'd played in a lot of bands and gigs and recorded. I had loads of kind of acoustic drum sounds to pull from. And then just trying to synthesize them in software was just kind of getting my head around synths enough to be able to make good kind of kicks, which seems stupidly simple now. Having just gone, all right, you get a sine, envelope to pitch, run it through VCA, done kind of thing. But that isn't kind of how people start using synths, is it really? That's not. Or at least for me, it was kind of preset flicking, learning how to tweak presets to what I want. Yeah. Then being able to initialize a patch on software and make something I like.
Yeah, it's like, in fact, actually, weirdly, I was talking to someone yesterday. We were doing like demos of like Moog and Arturia stuff all day. And I was doing demos of stuff, showing some tricks and bits and bobs and talking about like the DFAM. Shout out DFAM. Have that run. Just because I like it. But it was like, yeah, like the DFAM, interestingly, because I was posting on a like a live stream that Moog did, where it was Steve Dunnington who made the DFAM. And my question, the thing I've been trying to work out is like, how the hell did you come up with this? And interestingly, what he said was it came from the Voyager. I thought it was going to, like, this is my like stupid head. I was like, oh, it'll just be he would have been playing around with a modular and going, that's cool, this patch.
Yeah, we can package that into a circuit almost.
Yeah, and just go, well, we'll make that as a finished product. It's like, no, not at all. It came from drum synthesis, percussion synthesis on the Voyager. And he said, what people don't realise is the Voyager is an amazing percussion synthesizer, you know? And it's like, exactly as you say, it's like, of course it is. It's just that people just go to it and go, well, where's my Moog bass? Let's have that then.
Yeah.
And suddenly you just, and over time, the more you work with that instrument, if you're of a certain volition, like me, where you're a bit lazy in that sense, you're like, you just get into a mindset with it, and then you probably forget that you're like, no, you can do all this other stuff. You can make every part of a track with this device. You know, maybe a part of the problem is the fact that we've got way too many options and way too many synths. We're really spoiled, and it would do us well to be like, right, you've got no drum machine, you've got no nothing, you've just got like a 4-track and this one thing. Yeah. Like then you'd have to like bloody make some drums on it.
That's just I almost kind of get fed up of seeing them, because it's like, yeah, everybody's doing it now, but they are still good content. Those kind of make a track with one synth, be it software or hardware, and you kind of like another one like.
But it's a good exercise.
But it is really good, exercise. And I think it is a really important exercise.
Especially also just because it can be sort of stuff like just layering some sub under a kick just to fill it, you know, that which is like you say, where it's like you do something that just didn't have the production impact. It's like, well, you need tricks like that. You do need to know how to make something slam.
Well, like Andy that I used to produce with, as soon as I got into modular, we'd make some bass patch, and he was like, you're losing a bit of low end. Can we not take a sub from somewhere? And me, naive at the time, not knowing, I was like, no, that's the patch, that we'll do something else. And he was like, can we not just take like another wave out of that oscillator and just record it separately? And it's like, oh yeah, we could. We could just take the sign that's not being destroyed by the rest of the patch, run it through another VCA if it doesn't need to drone, and job done. Yeah. And then softs, interestingly, I mean, Andy's not responsible for this, but then you'd see it on soft synths like Serum, where there was a button to route the sub post all the processing, and I was like, oh, that's exactly what he was on about when I didn't get it. Yeah. But a lot of that kind of thinking came from recording ourselves as a band as kids in like my bedroom at my parents' place, and we'd have an SM58 in the sock drawer because we didn't have a stand, so you'd pull the drawer out, kind of
like put it on the edge,
and like stuff all around the band. And then we'd start layering up this Tascam. We had a tape recorder for a while, but we then got a hard disk one, and you'd be playing the chorus part, and one of the guitarists I was playing drums would say, yeah, I'll do the distortion part separately so that final chord from the chorus can ring into the verse. Nice. And that's when kind of like production started to thing, and we kind of argued as a band then, as kids, as, well, you can't do that live, we should just record it how we do it live. You turn your distortion on, you play the chorus, it's off for the verse or whatever.
But live, everyone will be having some pints and like no one will notice. They will notice on the record.
And then doing that and you're like, oh, right, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, we knew the kind of, 3-piece band, they go for a guitar solo or something and there is a guitar in the background. We were aware of that level of kind of overdubbing stuff. It's like, oh yeah, maybe you do want that to ring out, so it does need to be on a different track. Or remember it with guitar amps as well. The two guitarists wanted the same amp at one point, and having that discussion of, you don't want to sound the same. It will be bigger if you had different sounds. Even if you're playing the same chords or whatever, it's going to sound better that you're on different sounds and amps. We don't just want... I mean, if it was exactly the same, it'd just be a phasey mess between their playing. I guess their playing would be different enough it'd work, but...
You spread the stereo left and right or whatever, but still, you want it to be different.
Yeah, triple.
Otherwise, if you collapse it to mono, then you'll get it'll disappear.
Yeah.
I was talking about that recently.
It's funny, the layering sounds thing, working in college, these conversations, well, not anymore, but I was working in college, these conversations come up about triple tracking guitars was like the Metallica thing. And Paul Gilbert did this experiment. I think he recorded 100 guitars playing the same thing, and he was like, after 20, it's irrelevant.
Is it white noise?
No, I mean, he's playing, Paul Gilbert's a super proper player, it's great, but he said after 20, even putting like an acoustic in and then a distorted guitar, a clean guitar, because you cannot tell the difference. I used to go through that with, reason I bring it up is used to go through that with projects of just 120 tracks in Logic, and you're just like, why are we doing this? Like, and then it then turns to noise or mush or just a mess. Or
so how can you mix anything? I guess you just group everything as just high pass and band pass.
They'd be trying to make the biggest like saw wave pad chord you've ever heard, but then you realise you can't mix that. It's just an absolute dog to mix.
It's like, it's interesting that the sound of like bigness was, I was literally thinking about it. I think I made a note, because in fact I did, because I was wanting to talk about mixing tips. I have questions, but we don't have to talk about them. But
no, we'll come to that.
No, it's fine. But like we were talking about, you were saying like room reverb, like using room reverb on a send, basically in order to give some like life to drums, basically. You know, which I've done, you know, but you did sort of, it was the importance of it. Because actually the thing I had a thought the other day was at this event, I was like, I really like in videos, like when I'm making a video and you've got a live mic in the room with the synth, like so often it sounds way better through the mic because of the effect of the room with the synth, as in it sounds bigger. You get a real sense of the power of how powerful it did sound in the room. I.e., when we're talking about playing a synth through speakers into a space, I was like, my God, that thing sounded amazing. But when you listen to the dry signal, it's just like, it does not sound amazing. I had this with the Mother 32. I was like playing some square waves. I was like, I had to say to him, I was like, through a big system, people will shit themselves with that. But like, it doesn't sound like
drying headphones.
It doesn't. But I think that's what you were saying about the importance of that, the tiny report of room sound. Like, and actually there's on this tune that I'm doing, there's like a Fairlight drum kit, and it's like, there's a bit, and it just sounds so huge and bushy. And it's not from like the 12-bitness of whatever the Fairlight is, 8-bit, but it's because the drum sounds are really roomy, and that just got big, loud, short report.
But if they're in the samples, or you put that before compression, the conversation we had about the mixing stuff, just a phone call that we'd had, was recording a real drum kit. You tend to put a room mic, you know, right at the other end of the room. And that's usually, it's often called a dirt mic. And just, you will slam the hell out of it, you'll distort it, but it'll be, you know, 20 dB or more under the mix of the individual sounds and overheads. But the thing that adds, it's like the New York compression, parallel compression thing. Having that layer is such a powerful tool. Because you've still got all your transients and your dynamics and
above it. But it just gives it this underbelly of like fatness.
So for electronic drums, you know, there's a lot of great samplers and stuff, but I like just dropping sounds on a timeline and just, you know, copying the kick to every quarter note or whatever.
Like not putting in a sampler, like just spreading it.
Just dropping. In Logic, I do that. In Live, I put it straight into either a drum rack or a simpler. Why I do that, I don't know. Because Logic has the facility to do similar
Live's
things.
quite good in that it does name, when you actually get into your piano roll, the things are now correctly named, so you can be like, oh, that is actually the snare. Otherwise, you're like, is C3 the snare? It's like really annoying.
But you do that, and you get all your drums together, you maybe put them in a drum bus, compression, it sounds good. If you can send those to a reverb first, and send the whole kit as well, even the bass drum sometimes, but low cut it on the way in, and then compress that reverb, because it's like the room mic then. And if the reverb's small enough, you can have more small reverb before you notice it. You know, if there's a 10-second tail, you kind of know hiding that in a mix.
That's how I tend to do things.
Well, that's what you want on Simpson stuff, but you can't feed many drum sounds into that.
Well, no.
But you know, super small room, and convolution reverbs were great. Used to use Altiverb a lot, and there's Frank Zappa's Live Room has been modelled as an impulse response, and there's Nice Drum Room, Frank Zappa's Live Room, and another one that were just so good, just 100% wet, loads of compression, and just sit it underneath.
Just to simulate the dirt mic.
Yeah, because there isn't that with the electronic drums. But you can use that kind of dirt mic then as almost a dirt room. Well, let's make our synth production, completely electronic production, sound like a band in a room. Yeah. We'll run varying amounts of everything into it. So we've
like ripping sort of like synth sounds are going to sound bigger as well with that.
Yeah.
Like massive, because it's that thing, yeah.
There's
you get
no
a sense
modelling,
of the like it reverberating a space.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any modelling of moving air. The way we respond to that, there's no kind of getting around it. I mean, I bought a little just a radial reamp box, just so I could go the other way of a DI box and just go sound card out. And just used to run them. Yeah. You had a 4x12 Marshall stack at the time, so I used to just run hardware synths into it. But the recording chain, then we'd either reamp stuff like that playing around, and a lot of it was experimenting, but a lot made its way into productions. But you know, the amp might be pretty clean, but we'd have like a dry take off the synth, and maybe 1 into maybe pedals and an amp, or just an amp. And then a couple of mics on the amp. Treat it like you would a guitar. You've got 57 really close to it, and then something else a meter or two away. And just like that, once you bring that together, it sounds amazing. Yeah. And you can make an image out of a mono sound thing. So you can go, okay, dry sound down the centre, direct mic slightly left, room mic slightly right, and you've just got this image as well. But it's big. It works really well. Yeah. Another nice trick with reverb, a friend is playing every instrument himself, it's ridiculous, remaking some Duke Ellington jazz tracks. He's a brass player, but he's got a great drum, it's got a great feel. And I mean, it's a common trick, but I'd just not heard of it until he told me, having 100% wet reverb version on the opposite side. So as he's panning his horns, say he's got a soprano sax fully left, but then it doesn't sound weird fully left because there's a whole stack of horns in the kind of stereo image. So a bit like sitting in front of an orchestra, the strings are there, but they don't feel like they're hard left because the whole thing is one big space.
You're saying that the report of the reverb is on the opposite side to the actual dry instrument.
But then as the instruments come round, the reverb comes back the other way. Okay. So if it wouldn't.
I see. So that they
if it's trumpet hard right, the trumpet's reverb will be left. If
and then the ones that are
hard
right
left, that reverb
the reverb's
is there.
Hard right. That's a great idea.
That image is amazing.
Is it? Yeah, because of course you're going to hear like a little sort of bounce across the room effectively, like the sound spreading across the sound spectrum. Yeah. Especially if you've got like, work with your pre-delay just so, if we're talking reverb, so it's like actually you get that nice slap back.
Yeah. That's really nice.
So what is that like? Did they used to do that trick, or that's just...
I don't know if that came from...
something that...
When, mixers were just mono left or right.
Yeah.
Early Beatles stuff where drums is all the left.
Isn't that early Beatles stuff, like all hard left and right? It was only to create separation for a final mono bounce. Like, I read that. No, it was not... Like, I might have this wrong, but it wasn't like a sort of let's make the full use of stereo. It was like, let's make the full use of 2-track so that we can retain separation between some elements and that final like bounce down. Yeah. And ultimately it would be mono. Maybe it isn't, I don't know.
That'll kind of make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, when I remember different kind of thing, but going up to like 24-bit and 48K working, and all these arguments of you've got to get up to like 192 kilohertz or whatever, and it's just like, no, CD has sounded good enough forever. No one's ever said, no, this is lo-fi, like a well-recorded CD thing.
Absolutely. I've just dropped this down to 48 kilohertz, so this is being recorded at 48K.
Yeah,
so
well, that's video rate, 24 so that's kind of normal.
Yeah.
But where I noticed that is I used to like stem mixing. I still do. So take these big kind of DAW productions, have a drum stem, a bass stem, pads, leads.
You mean everything bounced down to a stereo?
8 tracks or less.
Simplify your 192 channel mix.
But then going up with that, because you then might turn that stem down 10 dB in the mix or whatever else, the kind of headroom of the 24-bit, that's the only time I really started to hear the difference.
Do you mean as in that 24-bit didn't collapse?
It just sounds, I guess because there's more range when you turn it down, It's somehow you're not losing that bottom layer of information.
Right. Okay.
The background room reverb in the bass stem or whatever. If you're going to turn that bass down 20 dB, that thing that was 20 dB under the bass is now 40 dB under, and it seemed to retain like that 3D depth kind of thing more. And maybe that's what that tape thing is you mentioned with the Beatles, of it makes full use of all the available kind of technology and headroom
of the sides. Yeah, that does make sense actually. And they're not squishing all 4 tracks into one strip.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like, you know,
I don't have the science of tape to know whether that's actually true or not.
But it's kind of the same with speakers. If each instrument had a speaker, it would be infinitely better, because that speaker could just work at replicating the bass and just the guitar. Once that's summed into the thing and it's been thrown all over the place with these mad waveforms of everything going on at once, it's having to work way more.
Would you get... Basically, this is a dream that I had where it was talking about because I've been playing with the Moog 1, like, we're very fortunate to like have some unfettered access to that monster. And it's 3 synths in one. And I was thinking, like, I just sort of, because it's, you know, it's a beautiful and sort of extreme device. I was thinking, like,
a speaker each would be amazing.
Well, so yeah, this was what I was thinking. I was like, I literally did this thought experiment. I was like, you've got a warehouse and you've got like the luxury of like 5 full, like, you know, line array stack systems in that warehouse.
Right.
And then you've got 3 Moog 1s. And then you've got like the System 55, like just there for like bass, like doing some drums, like you'd patch up some like drums stuff, or some percussive stuff. And like literally you'd have like 2 Beat Step Pros. Or, you know, you'd have a Beat Step Pro and a key step for each Moog 1. It's sort of like, I mean, obviously, we should be using the sequencer in the Moog 1, but just hear me out. And then you've got like, you sort of 3 key steps in a little like thing, and then you've got the beat step for drums. And you can sit in this sort of like, you know, imagine like you're operating a crane and you're on like a little sort of like platform halfway up the building. And you just from that position, just like make these things like fly and sing. But like each one has their own PA system. Imagine if each voice had its own. So the bass was its own like 50 sub stack, and then, you know, like what would that sound? It would sound amazing. I mean, like, it's exactly what you were saying. It's like everything could have its own voice. You know, I saw. Finally, keep talking about Moog, but at Moog Fest, I saw Sun O.
Oh, I've seen them. It's amazing.
Have you seen them?
It's an amazing experience.
That's basically what I'm talking about. Is like
they take their own PA system to every gig.
I mean, what was your take on
that
experience?
Like per person as well. Their Moog, is it a little Fatty or a Voyager they've got?
I think they had. Are they Prodigies? I think they're Prodigies.
It could
they're
be.
Like they're older Moogs. They're like sort of 80s, early 80s Moogs.
Yeah, but the fact that's got its own.
So can you,
2 4x12
for folks who don't know, please describe what is the setup like. You know better than I do because it's all guitar amps.
I think it's Matthew Shaw was a person to turn me on to Sun. And he said that it's like a metal band, like a doomcore metal band without a drummer. Yeah. And you're like, wait a minute, there's no like thrashy metal stuff. He's like,
there's no room left.
It's like doom ambient. So it's just droning fuzz, and the singer does very kind of like throat singy. He looks like a monk with his cloak up, kind of mysterious. I don't know, vocal stuff, all sorts of weird vocal techniques. Trumpet at one point. They ran a trumpet through a ton of reverb, and it just kind of appeared from nowhere. But it's like this smog of distorted guitar and synth, and the bass is the Moog, so it's just huge through the system.
When I saw it, they were like, I did count it at the time, and I can't remember how many it was, but there were like at least 14 4x12s on stage, you know, and where, you know, like Justice will have got fake ones.
Yeah.
These are all real, and they're on and working, you know. And so, and I assume that they did like, they had like a crossover, probably like a guitar crossover, so that they've got like bass stacks dealing with the bass. And
they bring their own custom built PA as well. And I'm not sure quite how that works.
I think in
terms of this was also going through the PA as well as the guitar stuff, or
like their vocals, maybe.
Yeah, as with Phil Curtis Hall, live engineer and performs at Blue Wolf 7. He was chatting to the sound guy at the gig, or knew of him. I think we should have stayed and had a conversation about
how have you done
what was
this?
kind of happening.
What have you done?
I didn't. We would buy the desk as well. I can't remember like how many channels are running, or because you'd imagine they don't need that PA. There's that much amplification that, other than maybe the voice, they don't really need much. But I mean, a lot of it's the same note as well. They'd maybe come up a minor third every now and then, and not all at the same time. You're like, oh, one of the guitars has moved up a couple of tones, or half a tone, or whatever, and then they'd all kind of glide in to meet them.
Because basically, am I right in thinking what they're doing? They've basically got like an open chord tuned on the guitar or something. Like, I feel like he was hardly touching the
there's
other
barely any playing.
And it effectively, you've got two people wearing like Doom monk outfits. They put so much smoke on stage that you basically can't see the band anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so loud that like we're reaching the point where it sort of stops being sound and starts just being feelings. Like,
it's an experience.
It's visceral.
Yeah, I used to try and show everyone in working in music education. I'd show them, and they're like, I'm not really into that. I'm like, just go see them.
Yeah, yeah.
If you get to see them, just go and experience
it's like seeing a Mark Rothko painting. It's like, it doesn't work if it's this big. You've got to go see the actual thing.
You might not want to put the album on or whatever, but just go and experience it.
Yeah.
But it's that thing of, if you've got a drum pattern and it's, peaking at a certain volume, it's dynamic. So the average level's nowhere near, let's say, 90 dB or whatever.
Yeah.
But Sono are just at 90 dB. Because it's just this huge drone sausage of, I mean, God knows how much fuzz and stuff they're running.
That's my new EP.
God knows how much fuzz is on it for them to barely touch and it keep going. I mean, people, I imagine a lot of us have put a load of effects on a guitar, hit a chord, but after a minute or two, it does start to kind of
tail off. But it goes a long time.
And I don't know if they're fading. Maybe between them, they're turning volume off and fading volume into effects, so that between them, the kind of cumulative effect is a wall of sound.
Yeah.
I mean, the mode can just be wall of sound.
Of course,
that can just drone.
But they would do things where they would just sort of both at the same time. They'd be like, and then they would just slam the guitar, and you would hear like the sound of like everything going completely like noise and atonal, and then the guitars are almost like synchronized. They would sort of like fall into line in a way that, like, when you see there's that experiment where people do where they put like, I can't remember how this works, but it's like a Newton's cradle, and then you put like a weight on it, and if you push it, everything sort of all these little like things start like swinging out of line, and then they all phase into, they like lock into step with each other. It basically was doing that, but like with guitars.
There's some oscillator circuits that do that. Is it entrapment, the word?
Right.
Chris Mylar of Learning Mods have posted about how some dual oscillator designs, you get a detune thing going, just a few cents off, nice detune bass sound or whatever. They will naturally, just like the circuit will pull itself. I think it's called, it might be, I don't know if it's entrapment. I'd have to find
quantum entanglement or something.
But it was that there are some circuits that will just nudge kind of in a bit more. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
It is interesting. It's like entanglement. But they were just, I had such, because it's not my sort of thing. I don't listen to like doom drone or anything like that. It's just not a field of music I've ever like. But that was like, when I saw them, I was like, I get it. I totally get why this is brilliant, and I really enjoyed it. It was just hilarious. Like within the first minute, seeing the amount of people who left the sort of arena that we're in, it was just like,
you've got to be willing to go with it, though. It's like the minimal techno thing. There was a Great Justice interview at some point. It might have been Mix Mag or something like that, and they were kind of slating on minimal techno for ages, as part of their career, and they eventually said, with the right concoction of drugs, but you could even take that out of the equation, they were out one night somewhere, and then it clicked.
They were like,
it's probably Berlin, wasn't it? They were like, The fact
we had a few disco biscuits, and we got it finally. Like, oh, fair enough.
But you kind of just have to go and be open enough to go with it, I think. You listen to like really minimal techno mixes, some of the Minus artists, or Richie Horton, to pick a big name out, or something like that. The fact you haven't had a clap or a snare on 2/4 or a hi-hat for 20 minutes, when that comes in, that's the same elation for a crowd in a club as like the big melodic trance DJ pretending he's Jesus on stage. That hi-hat, just that, it's just like, it's just like you've been given something, the suspense of it.
The thing that kills me is how hard I really struggle with creating arrangements that are that like well paced. like on a linear timeline in a DAW. I feel like, so again, just having this conversation quite recently, literally over the weekend, about you know, making dance music like that, making that kind of music, like proper club music and like proper techno.
Yeah.
I'm in awe of people who can do that on a timeline in like non-real time. Do you know what I mean? As in, like, to have the sort of, because obviously you just like you just count like 8, bass 8. It's like, but having the sort of, being able to sort of stand back far enough and sort of see the flow of the track, because exactly as you're saying, to know that this will really be the moment to elevate it and to know exactly what to place and exactly how to structure that. I find it really difficult, because I feel like you can only really do that when you've lived in the moment of the track. So you almost have to like go back to the very start of the track every time you play it, so that you really establish the proper context for that thing that you're bringing in. It's just the difficult of the linear timeline versus just having a table of gear and just doing it in real time, and then it all happens naturally, because you're like, oh, I need a hat, and you just go bang, there it is.
I mean, you could kind of mimic it with, you know, crank the speakers up and just have like a launchpad based controller.
Yeah.
And just be like, that's where that feels like it needs to come.
And do like a dub mix for your.
You
like,
could
tune.
even, I mean, I've never done this, but you could even start by, I mean, you'd have to turn them down a bit because they'd be mastered and your track wasn't, but thinking if you're in Ableton, you could even just kind of play around with a couple of tunes first, mix into your drums. If you could cross over to your thing and then you're in that feeling.
That actually like play a set
just for 10 or 15 minutes, play a couple of tunes that you like that are good references, sound-wise, style-wise, tempo, whatever. Mix into your drums and be like, that's where that feels like.
That's a really good idea. Yeah. Just like, like it's the equivalent of doing like mix referencing, but you're almost doing sort of feel referencing. Yeah, like get yourself in the mood.
I think it was D. Ramirez did a thing for Future Music years ago about dropping tracks that you like onto the top track of your DAW and just taking its structure.
Yeah.
And he was like...
And nothing else.
He goes, it's club music. It's all kind of the same anyway.
Yeah.
But he put one of his own tunes in and he was like, we don't all have this luxury, but he's saying, I've played this over the last year live and I know that really works. Just dropping out for 2 bars and coming back, but then 16 later going into the proper break.
Yeah.
So he goes, so I'm going to mirror that in my arrangement. Yeah. And I think he just had drums at that point. So he'd kind of scattered the drums out roughly the same, but then just took the reference track out. It was like, right, now I've just got a framework.
Ooh. Like building scaffolding or a foundation before you build it.
But that's like using loops. I used to pull stuff out of like Vengeance sample packs that was like a full drum loop. But then I'd start adding in little one-shots that might inspire a bass line or some chord hits or whatever. And I'd just take the loop out. But that's put me in the moment. It's 2-bar drum loop or something. It's a great way of working.
Yeah, that is a good...
And if you make all your own loops as well, you can then just... I mean, I'm not against leaving those loops in. Do what you've got to do. I don't think there's a thing as cheating by using samples or anything. But if you're making your own loops as well, almost like a box of tricks or like a little inspiration box or I don't know, something that you've got that just works or...
That's interesting. Yeah, that is a good idea.
Having these like almost... You see a lot of sample packs like this now and they sell well because they're effectively selling dreams. This kind of song starter pack where it's like if you
you were talking about the fact you don't do those anymore. They sell dreams a little too successfully sometimes.
You take... You know, here's some drums and some bass loops and everything else that you can piece together like a jigsaw for a track. And they work. Here's like 10 EDM song starters or whatever. But if you've got that of your own ideas, then you're kind of off.
Yeah.
It works well.
I keep saying this, but it's just actually something I've been thinking about. But I was talking about this the other day. And it was that whole idea of like having... Because we were talking actually about just making weird sounds on synths. And it's like... have a sound design day and then have a writing day. You know, it's I've talked a lot about this, like separating the sort of sound design and the writing process. You know, that's something that Zoe Blade as well talks. She talks loads about that, and so rightly so. Where it's like, you know, she has like a basic template in Reason, which is just all like almost a chip tune layout, and then you know she'll just make the tune and then be like, right, now I go to the A100, and then. You know, she's
and she's posting great videos of like here's a bass drum that's this filter oscillating.
Yeah, like really complex sound design, which is using the best use of the modular.
Yeah,
because And and it's so right, because it is just like, you know, if you try to go to the modular for sound design inspiration during the writing process, I think it's an all or nothing. I think if you're still trying to work on a computer, I feel like it's just too many, because there are an infinite amount of options. You're just never going to get anything done. Like, you've got to write the thing first and then do sound design. Or you don't have to. Because we've said, and as you know, it's like the sound is the track in the sense of like the ambient. But it's just to make this point that like you can separate the two, and I think it's probably a more healthy way of using the modular as a sound design tool. And that's what you've been doing.
But that's where but that's where simple modules work and stuff as well. Like if you've got this killer bass thing, like I really want to make a track out of this, and I imagine that's a point a lot of people get to. Like I've got a great synth line or weird percussive thing or drone, I need to make a track. If you have to stop that creative process to kind of technically make the next thing, right, I'm going to make my own kick drum.
Yeah,
you're out of that headspace. Even if it's
you probably have to unpatch the modular as well, and you scream then.
Yeah, I mean, even if you know big system and it's just a couple of patch cables away, it's not just going, oh man, I wish there was just a kick through this, or you know, whatever rhythm the kick's playing. Or if you have to stop to find a way of using like a divider and a logic module to make the rhythm you've got in your head, you're out of that headspace instantly.
It's not like the modular is not the best way of doing those things, but it is, as you know, it is a powerful source of sounds. But I think it's like that scaffolding point. It's like you need the scaffolding just so that when you're like 2 hours into making that bass sound, you're like, what was that? What was the tune again?
And I think that's probably where the hardware stuff isn't to say people that just use hardware make less music. I'm sure it's up and down for everyone, but that's probably the downfall of it, is just that there's nothing there to give you the next bit. I've had so many bits where band environments or on my own way, just throw a shit like a 16th note shaker in, and just that just gives that, and it's like, right, you're then inspired again, and you keep going, and you just kind of keep working. Just throw in.
Well, conversely, I would say that like when you're working with hardware only, and you're like, well, shit, I can't put in a 16th shaker because I haven't got one. Then you think, well, all right, what I could do is change the bass part. And re-inject some in, and that's like getting that circle on has been like for the little bit I have used it has been really interesting, because I've been forced. I no longer have the luxury of just shoving things on the pile of sonics. I have to actually just work within what I've got. So you work more like a band in that sense. You're like, well, you know, I can't just bring another guitarist on stage now. We're going to have to just like find a way to change this up musically. And I work harder to like change parts and evolve parts and make the bass line change and the elements change. And
I mean, you can keep adding layers, and that's interesting to a point, but I'm sure there's loads of music we all like where it really wasn't made on that much. And they're just absolutely rinsing the gear. That's an interesting point you say, where if you want to put like a 16th note shaker in and you don't have the sound or the function to sequence it, what can you do to the other parts to give a more busy rhythmic feel or whatever? That's I think that's where the kind of technical and creative crossover, because it's not just a line of one or the other. I don't think I'm either being creative and writing, or I'm stopping and I'm being technical. And
you certainly have to be both, because you have to be technical to like get the equipment to do what you want.
But I think those things, and that I mentioned having like a box of tricks of your own sounds earlier. Learning all those things, I think for me at least, is almost something I do separate to any kind of writing. Like if I've run out of tracks, I can't add any other sequencing on the modular. What can I do to make it busier? Well, you're not going to learn how to use your module right in the process of writing that song or jamming. So I think Liam Howlett said in an interview once he had, was it Sampling Sundays or something? He said, he's like, that's when I just sit and sample records. That's what I do on a Sunday.
That's interesting.
And it's almost like, I know Morgan Page, who's done a lot of dance stuff and pop writing and whatever, having like admin days, you know, kind of spring cleaning the desktop of the computer, and days that you back up and days that you whatever. So that, and you know, it might not be a strict on a Monday I do this, but having a day to do all that doesn't then cross over into tonight I'm going to try and write a track, or I'm feeling like I want to play my gear. Or
it's interesting, he has sampling days. Like I wonder what he does. How does he catalogue those? What does he do with them?
I mean, it might not have even been Liam Powell. It might have been someone else.
You do think of like, you look at those track deconstructions of like, you know,
those remakes of those are
crazy.
And
you're like, how long did it take you to find the bits? Because it's the collage, it's the snipping up the collage aspect of it. And you're like, well, if you're having to like dip into other records to find that magical slice, like how much time does that take? Or is it just that fact that now that we see it done, it seems like magic, but obviously, you know, maybe it didn't take him that long. Maybe he did do it all on a Sunday and he was like, these will all work together, and they just magically did, and now you've got to smack my bitch up. And it's like,
but it amazes me with the hip-hop guys, and I've played in bands and still work for a few of these guys, that when they're just sampling records and you'll hear something and you think, oh, it's just an 8-bar jazz loop, and you put some drums over it and it's got this nice lazy hip-hop feel. But it might be 4 different tracks running, and you're like, well, none of those jazz records recorded to a click. They certainly weren't all in the same key to start with. And it's almost just a completely different mindset. I've never kind of got into that of I'm just going to rip a part of a sample. And it might be more creative than that. It might be more like the Prodigy thing, just chopping chunks up. And you hear bits of records and it might just be really basic filtering. It's almost just this kind of naive approach, not going into it. And it's not to say everyone making hip-hop doesn't know what they're doing. I don't mean it like that. But having this approach of, well, I'm just going to do that and I'm going to filter that out, and I want some low end. So here's a jazz record, but you're only hearing everything below 200 hertz that was in that record, and I'll make that work. Yeah, I've never worked like that.
You've never, like, you mean you've never collaged to that degree? No, where it's like you're always just making stuff.
No, and I've tried to make hip hop, or when I used to do, certainly it's not something I've tried more recently, and it sounded rubbish. It was nothing like what they were doing.
It's just a completely different part of it's a different skill set of electronic music. Is the ear for the collage and for how to assemble and mix it efficiently. Just like learning to produce like EDM drums is like a somewhat specific skill set, you know. Yeah. Although obviously those skills
it's like making Flying Lotus style lazy hip hop. You can't just say, oh well, it's all slightly out of time. The hi-hats are slightly back, the snares are slightly forward.
Dilla drums as well.
Yeah, Dilla drums and stuff. There's more to it than that. And it's like the I used to talk about how I really like the humanized function on MIDI. Same friend that's doing the full playing everything on a Duke Ellington record and remaking it. He was like, yeah, but that's not real. He goes, if we humanize something, the drummer isn't. He goes, all right, there are these micro shifts that are happening.
The drummer isn't doing like the notator 52% swing or whatever. That's not actually.
And he was saying that, you know, the humanize is just truly random. It's some notes a little bit back, some a little bit forward. He goes, what's happening is they might be rushing the hi-hat, and that gives it a certain feel.
Right.
Which is, was it Luke Vibert that's doing that live with a drummer?
Square Pusher is doing like live drummer with like Adam Betts, like the sort of mad like drum and bass drummer.
Is it James Holden?
James Holden also. Oh yeah, so James Holden, yes, is doing it using his max patch that takes the drummer's timing.
But it's like learning feel.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with that Flying Lotus. You can't just say, oh, if you pull the snare early, it'll give it this vibe. There's way more to it than that. And playing in hip-hop bands, I used to play with an electronic kit, and we would put silence before the samples.
Oh, you told me about
So I might be playing a sample on the hat that's 20 milliseconds behind.
Because you're like, a drummer cannot be told to play late, as such.
To a degree, and people can listen to this nearly out, this Tough Crowd is the group, the album. I think we've got it, but we spent like 6-7 years trying to play this stuff at this band. So it's been me on drums all this time, the same bass player, and we've kind of got it live.
This is to make stuff that sounds slopped, like in an intention.
Yeah, and enough, and not just like, oh, they're just trying to play wonky. And there's bands doing it. It's not to say it's impossible, but it took us a long time with electric kit, and then saying, no, it doesn't sound right. It kind of sounds out of place with the rest of the live musicians. Going to an acoustic kit, how can we get that feel? Colin Sutton, the bass player, amazingly could just be wherever you wanted him to be.
Yeah,
you know, one of the rappers that maybe it's kind of less musically inclined, but they'd just say simple statements like, you just make the bass late. And he'd just sit right there. And but then that makes me feel different. And to start with, I'd start edging back to him. Yeah. And they're like, we're slowing down now because he's trying to play behind you and you're trying to meet him. You've just been able to do it. But it's worked.
That's proper like rubbing your belly and patting your head stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. It's finally kind of...
So you just literally made the samples, you added 20 milliseckons of silence
we'd try it.
And then play in time.
That's how we'd start experimenting with this kind of stuff. Idea, I mean. One of them would sit with an MPC as I was playing the acoustic kit, and I'd even just have his keys in his pocket, and he'd just kind of throw his keys up and down on 2 and 4. And we'd be like, I'd go away thinking this. It wasn't some deep analytical thought, but I'm like, he'd throw them too late and they'd come down after the snare. So you'd be like, so I need to make my left hand lazier, but I can't have that affect the right hand and the kick, because then the whole thing just like it just slows down. So we spent. It's the first. It's funny that the kind of statement for this Tough Crowd album is it's our debut and final album. Because we've had so many keyboard players kind of come and go, and that we've all kind of had enough of it. We're all still friends, but we're putting this album out. I think it'll be out soon. There's vinyl.
So what's it called? Tough Crowd is
the group.
Is the group. And what's the album called? Our debut and final album.
I don't know what the name is actually. We'll have to put a link. I think there is one. There's a great album cover that I proofed. But we'd record everything. It's weird how it came together. The rappers would record it all because we'd just jam for years. Just mic in the room, maybe one on the drum kit, a couple in front of some amps or something. Really, and all the recordings of that, they've managed to kind of work their magic on making that sound good. Yeah. It's got a good feel for it as well, that if I was recording it was like, right, we're coming in and we're having a day recording drums, it just wouldn't have had that feel.
Too precise.
But you'd go back in and they'd say, oh, 3 hours into last Wednesday, you nailed this wicked loop for like a minute and moved on. Can we do that? But he could show us it because he could wind back and you're like, once we've heard it. Because, you have these jam situations where like, it's gone. But they'd capture it. And the way that albums worked is there's lots of them treating us like a record they're sampling. So it might be that they've taken several chunks and made an 8-bar loop. And we'd have to relearn that and play it live. And sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't feel quite right. We've got rougher recordings that we think kind of feel better. Like, that's the one, but just
it sounds
cable wasn't plugged in right, or something we can't fix.
It is a really good exercise. It's like you were saying about faking the sort of room mic thing, is making stuff sound like samples. Is like, that's the sort of Boards of Canada thing of print it to tape and probably print it to tape again and then again and like just to make it sound like you sampled something even though you didn't. And getting around the sort of being able to release records and not get a lawyer knocking on your door in like 2 years when some sharp-eared musicologist is like...
That's also what that stem mixing process did, though. We're circling back quite nicely here, like we've planned it.
Yeah, we totally
if you make for me, if I stem my drums down to just a stereo, that's all the drums, that's all the bass, that's all the whatever. Those little bits of background reverb and everything are in those stems.
Yeah.
There's no thinking about, I want to add some... Well, I mean, you can add whatever you want, but it just becomes... If you then compress that, or they all run through a mix bus or whatever, they're just there. But it would be if you recorded it. If you record that guitar in that room, all right, you might really close mic and amp, but that's just the sound.
It's built in.
It's that commitment, I think. And it's not to say that I won't go back and tweak stuff. You might be doing that mix, think, oh man, that hi-hat's just too loud. So then it's awkward because you then go back to the other project, you dip it, bounce it back out. So you then start to question, should I just keep working in one project? But I really don't like it. I think the end results are far better for me when I do a mix. I do mix as I go. It's not like this, it's totally rough. Make really, and then stop and make really good stems. Just like today or this hour or this session, these drums are going to be killer. I'm just going to make the best drum stem out of what I've got that I can.
And then you do flatten it down.
And then flatten down stereo. Yeah. And I might go back. I might have got it wrong. Okay. You listen the next day, it's like, oh man, the snare's just...
When you were saying when you master your own stuff, you've got to master from a stereo mix. You don't allow yourself the luxury of doing it.
No, I don't want to look at anything. Yeah. I don't like mastering my own stuff anyway, but it's a necessity at times. But I like that distance as well. If I do a mix and I start making stems and then I sleep on it, and then I do a stem mix and then I sleep on it, and then I do a master, I feel like that gives me enough distance from each bit of the process to be that bit more objective. No, it's not to say I'm the best at any one of those stages, but that's how I try and force in some objective view. I mean, I've had to do quick stuff where you're like, I'm just gonna, that's it.
Well, every video you make is basically you're doing that. I mean, we all have to master our own videos.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah.
But music, most of it, I mean, it's a luxury thing as well. I'm sure we'd all like a budget to go, man, I really want them to master it.
To get Nathan Moody to master it. I would very much like him to just do everything. That'll be good, actually.
Yeah. And I know Nathan wants others to master his work as well. But we don't. It's not always possible.
Like you say, with time and money, and it's like, yeah, of course.
The mastering of other people's work though works because you don't care about any of the little details. Now, it's not to say you're a horrible person that doesn't respect their work, but you may have achingly spent a full weekend nailing that bass sound. So you're not going to take that notch out of the EQ because you're too precious about it. You just have this overarching view and just go, oh, there's a problem in that area, or that needs enhancing or whatever. And you just kind of, you do it, you don't care.
Yeah.
If you've, talked about these drums, if the snare was made on the modular and it took me 4 hours to make this patch and it's all dynamic and moving, I'm not going to start EQing bits out as much because you're going to be like, no, it sounds great. And it's like, well, someone else just go, nope, take that out.
I really need to do the whole mix referencing thing. That's the sort of, everyone says that's the most important thing. And I realise it is, because it's that thing of getting used to like smells in a room. You get used to the sound that you've created and you think it's normal when it's not.
What's hard with that is you're referencing mastered tracks.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. That is very
like
true.
My mix just isn't slamming, and it's like, well, that's a sausage dance master. And all right, I'm not completely against stuff being squashed. That's stylistically a lot of the music we listen to, but you're listening to very dynamic open mixes at times, and you're like, it just doesn't hit the same. Have you tried any of the Match EQ plugins? They're interesting.
I've got the Equivocate, the newfangled, Eventide sort of newfangled plugins, which I wanted to basically lucky to have those, and then was just thinking, because I've got to master this thing myself, I'm like, right, actually I'm probably going to try use these, because mainly with the Equivocate thing, it's like it uses the Mel curve, which I'd never heard of. I think we're all supposed to know what that is, but that's basically the sort of it's like bands of the EQ that are chosen. I'm going to get this wrong, but basically in a sort of the frequencies that the human ear responds to.
It's a bit like the Bach frequency response. It's more
like
natural.
It's more of a naturalistic curve. So when you scoop stuff out,
so
it just kind of sounds a little duller or brighter, but without being freaky and harsh, and getting that real singing, ringing frequency thing. So basically, and that's got a Match EQ thing on it. So I was gonna.
It never works like the kind of dream of it for me. Really naive, not much experience. I thought, oh well, if I take this person's track,
a Match EQ,
analyze that in the Match EQ, and then apply that curve to mine, it'll sound the same. Of course it won't, because it's all totally different. You've got
different elements.
You haven't made it out of the same building blocks.
Totally different.
But it's a really good learning curve. Logic's
does it give you does it get you in the ballpark?
You see that, you can see it, and you're especially low end when you can't, small back bedroom or something, you can't hear it, or you don't have a system that replicates it. You're like, why is there 50 points of spiky EQ on my mix to make it sound like this record that I like? It gives you even if that's as far as it goes, you're like, well, I know there's something wrong. I don't know what it is,
but there's something wrong there.
And Logic's got one by default. It's just one of the kind of default EQs is a Match EQ. It's been there for years, and it's great just to put it in and be like, and certainly with the dance stuff, like I was saying about when there's 32 bars of just drums, just analyze your drums against those drums and be like, all right, that's all jagged in the top. That must be my hi-hats that are off. It's really good learning tool.
That is good.
I've never used it and actually applied it. Gone, okay, then I'll leave the Match EQ on. But it's really good. For
It's always been like a marker of problems.
It's an interesting tool. I mean, we're talking electronic music, but if you're doing something as a band and you can find all these multi-track stems of Zeppelin or whatever, just go, does my guitar sound like Jimmy Page? Well, no, it's not Jimmy Page playing it, nor is it the same guitar. But again, just be like, oh, all right, gives you an idea of
what these. I was watching a video of Brian May deconstructing Bohemian Rhapsody, which is amazing as well. Just hearing the construction process. I mean, even the 24 track is already well bounced. There's a lot of stuff that's been bounced down on that. But you talk about how Freddie Mercury could sing so accurately that he would get phase cancellation on his
double tracking. That's amazing.
I was like,
thinking of Zeppelin, the reason they sound big is because, well, Jimmy Page's guitar tone's thin. You think Zeppelin are, wow, they're free, all right, 4-piece with a singer, but 3-piece and they sound huge. Bonham sounds huge. But that's really the only thing in that production that they've let be big. And there's kind of a lesson to learn in that. Again, speaking to Phil Hall at Blue Wolf 7, he does a lot of live sound, big world tours and stuff, and he'll tell that he's high-passing guitars up to 200 hertz. And I'm like, you're cutting half of the root note out. It's like, you just don't need it. And that kind of crude live response of just,
That's how I'm again, mixing this thing. I've been I sort of was reading like on that sounds like top mixing tips of like, it was like Mike's senior article from like 10 years ago. But it's a good one. It's just like, it's a listicle before listicles, but he's like, here are the top mixing mistakes. He's like, he said, a lot of the time people aren't high passing enough. Like, we know the importance of high passing because, with so many things, there's tons of sub bass and shit, but he said you can go far further than you think that you might be able to.
And the mistake to do with that is, and I spent 10 years doing this, is doing the EQ while you've soloed it.
Yeah.
Because you hear it.
Yeah.
You get as far as kind of the root note of the instrument and you start cutting it out and go, oh, I'm losing weight and body or bass. If it's not soloed, you go way higher before you hear it, and then just back off a touch.
Yeah. So
that's always kind of been my thing with that.
EQ in context with it, everything else playing. Because there's also the weird psychoacoustic things where like almost another part sort of fills out. Do you know what I mean? Where you almost feel like you do hear that, what is missing. If a bass part is playing, correctly, blah, blah, blah.
And being all the effects and layers, being way more heavy-handed with EQ is a nice one. I was listening to Ian Shepherd's mastering show on the way up. Their latest podcast is Mastering Crappy Mixes. And they'd kind of say...
I could do with listening to that.
They're kind of saying, well, you can't get a good result from a bad mix. But they're talking about one of their pet hates is not de-essing the reverb. So you send a vocal in that's quite sibilant and essy, and if that hits the reverb and you get that splash of shh, and they're saying that's a pet hate. They're kind of going through pet hates and mix fixes that they've always fed back to clients. And I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And there's another producer that pitches up their vocals an octave before it hits the reverb. That was a trick. I was like, it does sit quite well. It makes everything chipmunk. Obviously, you put an octave shift on a just
so that the reverb isn't bleeding into the same frequency, mushing. So they're getting out of each other's way, basically.
And pre and post EQ on a reverb, the pre changes how that reverb responds. The post EQ on a reverb is the color of the reverb. Because you could just send something into it.
I have been EQing reverb quite heavy-handedly ever since I read. I might have been an Ian Shepherd. No, it was. I can't think of the dude's name, basically, but it was an article about the sort of the Abbey Road reverb trick, which is basically, I think it's like high passing it at 6 kilohertz, and then low passing. I'll get it wrong, the frequency band, but it's basically band passing quite to a quite major degree the reverb, and I basically started doing it on everything because what it allows you to do is put loads of reverb and it still doesn't overpower. It's still just things sound reverberant and then angelic, which is what I like to have. But I'm not like to mix into a blurry mess.
But it's like the ping pong delay in Ableton. You turn it on by default, it's band passed in. Sounds great. Every time I use it, I'll just fire a little send in, get a little ping pong going, and you're like, it just sits. But that's because by default it comes in.
Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah, it is.
But you think of the reverb thing, you're sending a whole drum mix in. And then
what could possibly go wrong?
Say you then take a load of low end out afterwards. That reverb has still had to work and respond to all the low end in the bass drum. You cut all the low end before your reverb plugin, or it could be modular, you just high pass filter and then it doesn't have to respond to it. So it's like corrective on the way in, colour on the way out.
Like having all that energy bouncing around in the sort of the algorithm does things.
And again, like Ableton's default reverb has that. You've got that low and high cut. That's on the way in.
Yeah, that's true.
And I always like roll a lot more low off that than I would.
So do you say you EQ before the reverb or after?
Both sometimes.
Yeah, it depends what it sounds like.
Most plugins I use tend to have it built in. So I'm not going like EQ, reverb, EQ.
Just use all of Valhalla.
Funnily with modular, I picked up, I think I've got 4 of them now. Those music things, simple EQs. It's treble bass and like a tone tilt, more high, less low. And I wrap them around all my effects. So I have 2 around the ZDSP.
Posh bastard.
And
you can just...
Well, it's not a live case. It's not a live case, but because...
Well, that would be make a lot more sense to have it in a live case. Yeah,
but because... So ZDSP, big, nice Halls of Valhalla reverb, and the DLD, which I love as delay. I use the tonal tilts in the feedback path, because there's no tone control on the DLD. And I use the treble and the bass on the ZDSP. It's usually on the way in.
Yeah.
I'll go into
same
the
sort
EQ.
Of same trick, really, but it makes a lot of sense to do it.
And you've just sort of, it's buying, for me, it's buying almost freedom to just go, ton of reverb on that.
Exactly right.
It's
and
like
it
a
still sounds fine.
Yeah,
it still sounds fine.
Yeah.
But the, who was it? I saw someone has, and this is literally a module, I was like, why does nobody make this? Is a 35 hertz high pass stereo in and out Eurorack module. So you can just high pass your whole mix. I was like, hallelujah. Like, because stupid bloody mixing desk designers, like all the mixers are all designed for guitars and for bands where it's like 100 hertz. It's like 100 hertz is no good to me. Like I need 35 or 20, you know, really. It's like where I've had like loads of problems from just sending massive subby mixes into big PAs. And if someone's made it, someone just like a 2 HP mix cleaner. I can't remember who it was. I'll try and find it and link to it. But yeah, it's like, you genius.
We were on about that with mastering though. I think we were talking about high passing and that, you know, you just put a low end roll off at 30 hertz, 35, 30 hertz, whatever.
Wasn't that what Jeremy Blake was saying, where he was like, I just put a 35 hertz because I watched that video where the guy says, was it Jeremy? Or like someone
Jeremy.
Who'd said like, I just high pass everything at 35 hertz. Go watch the video with some like Berlin techno producer who said just do that. But it will, you don't need anything else much.
But a lot of PA systems aren't replicating 20 hertz.
No.
You spend a grand on a pair of studio.
Sonos one does.
But if you spend a grand on some studio monitors, and if they're just two near fields, however good they are, they're probably rolling off from about 40.
Yeah.
So it's probably like, more. Why even have mush? Down there?
Yeah.
Rubbishy hi-fi stuff. I've always kind of gone for like 70, 80 hertz. Is the kind of low end that most... I mean, technology's changed so much since then that most people have access to good listening stuff, but a rubbishy hi-fi would be like 70-ish.
Yes.
So like that's where you kind of want the body of the kick to be. And then obviously harmonics above that will help it translate on systems that don't have bass.
That is the thing, like... Tuning drums as well is something that I've like... only relatively recently. I
went through a phase with that, with production, where I try and tune it all, but then you realise a lot of them don't have a strong tonal centre long enough to hear it.
Yeah.
If you think of making a kick, just take a sine wave, just an exponential decay to pitch. That's kind of, you've got a kick.
Yeah.
But unless that envelope comes down and sits on a level long enough,
it doesn't actually hold.
It's
too pew.
Yeah.
It's same with that said, but the 808 kick is very much tuned, isn't it? I mean, what is that? What note is that? The default 808, depending on what year it's from.
Yeah.
And what year it is.
And 808s, though, they're like hand-hammered cymbals in that they all do slightly sound different. Well, and you can have a good one.
Yeah. You can. Like,
Matthew Shaw got his service by the guy
one?
that works from 808, and he was like, this is one of the best 808s I've seen for a while. Condition, the range of the decay control, the tuning, the kind of how soft or hard it was just kind of in the middle and just had enough control.
What I absolutely loved, I was talking to the chap who's doing System 80, who's doing like the sort of the 808
building,
and I was like, the kick decay, the kick isn't long enough, and he said, hand on heart, that is how long an 808 kick is, and trust me, it is.
We're just used to compressors pulling the tail up.
Correct. And we're also probably used to things that are just synthesized, faked, and we just call them an 808, but it's not what the 808 actually sounded like. And he says, no, trust me, I've done a lot of referencing. And also, he mentioned this, I was like, oh my God, of course. He's like, I listened to a lot of tracks from the early 80s that used 808s because...
Far less processed.
Well, because they're the...
Or it was the real one.
They're the only way we can now hear what an 808 is supposed to sound like box fresh. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? As in, well, you could completely recreate it with the same... There were like 5% resistors in an 808. Yeah. There were 5% in 81 or whenever it was, 83. But... He's like, by listening to the records, they're like a time capsule of what the drum machine sounded like new, because all of them, they started at 5% and now they're probably like 25% or something. All the capacitors have dried out and everything's like gone wonky. But it's quite a fascinating idea that you can no longer, like, there's a sort of movable, like whatever the 808 is amorphous. Like, it's a movable beast. Like, it doesn't mean the same thing to anyone.
No.
And quite a lot of people, I think, that's like with the drum brute. It's like where you play with the Arturia drum brute. Like when we did that video, and it's like want to hear it through guitar pedal, because that's when it really comes alive. You process it.
Yeah, because it's super raw.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard that. And the drum group, I remember
idea.
people saying, oh, it doesn't really sound that good. And it's like, these are just raw electronic drum circuits.
Yeah.
CR78s, all that kind of thing. It's happened again with the Endorphins Black Noir. People said to me in that video, yeah, they're just not like, they're not that big and heavy. And I'm like, well, they're not. The 808 wasn't. None of these things were.
Yeah.
Really.
Like, but very much as we were talking about with the room reverb on drums, it's like you listen to it like the 808, like the TR-08 through headphones. That's one thing, but go and trust me, go to a PA, plug it in, put it into a room, and now tell me that it sounds digital and thin. It's like, no. But yeah, but whether the pitch and the tolerance of things have gone out, but you need rooms, like you've got to work with drum sounds to make them sound good. And especially, the drum root's a real lesson in people perhaps not realising that the originals did not sound so amazing.
That's the appeal of it for me, though.
Yeah.
I really like the Black Noir from Endorphins, the Euro drum module. They don't have a drum root, but the appeal is that they are just raw drum sounds. I like the fact of, I'll then start thinking about how I process it. I'll record it through a bit of Rat Gear or whatever, rather than just plugging it in and going, that's good enough.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's the best analogy that I heard was the guy saying how treat drum machines like guitars, like an electric guitar or a real kit. Yeah, like
you never just hear it with a mic.
Yeah, you're not going to DI. Well, you do DI electric guitars, but they go through these things called amps, which have this kind of distorting characteristic and add room because they're played into a room. And
going back to amps,
that's the sound of a guitar.
The nice thing with reamping through effects, if you can record dry, and Cell Dweller's got a video of his guitar. He always DIs his guitar, so he can almost clean up the playing before it goes into the effects. So he says, if I hit a chord,
I see,
and there's like as he slides down the strings, he goes, I don't want
to be amplified
really loud through the thing.
Yeah.
So you can snip all the cleanup. It's the same with drum. I mean, drums less so because you're only going to make them play what you want. But again, if you record it dry, EQ out that frequency that's going to make the distortion flip out. There's so much more.
God, I've been using that. What is it? Sound Toys Crush. There's Destroy.
Is it the Decapitator?
Not Decapitator, which is great, but
that's D16, isn't it?
He's got no. Decapitator is the that is Sound Toys. That's their like sort of pento distortion and like really nice distortion. But what is they've got like a little Crush monster. It's only got like 2 dials.
Oh, when they've done like little free or cheap.
Yeah. Well, I used that on like my New York sort of drum bus on a couple of tracks, and it was like, and it is just fierce, but it's also like, it's one of those plugins that's almost alive and it's doing different things depending on, I'm like, whoa, why is like my drum's like 10 dB louder now, and there's like this sound has just like exploded, and it's just a weird way like the plugin reacts, and sort of like it like you almost need to put in a sort of bake in some pre-roll so that the plugin like ramps up to its like full velocity.
It's like heavy compression when the attack and release is too fast and nothing's hit for a while. That first hit just slaps really hard. You almost need to get that out of the way.
Yeah, exactly right. So you almost have to have like a sort of a pre-hit that's muted just so that like the device is.
It's like the auto gain on like a handheld recorder. I've been out, capturing Foley. You see people do it all the time, like a Zoom H6 in their hand or something.
Yeah.
And it's got auto gain on, which is great, but you can't just go bang, right, there's that sound of me hitting that pipe. You need to smack it a few times, let it learn the gain, and then get the hit.
Yeah. I was looking at those like cassette field recorders, like Heinbach was sort of like, he's the one who's like completely nuts for those things, and it's
toy pianos as well. I've got I'm saying this because I want people to pester me about it. When I went to Berlin for Super Booth, I've got kind of a documentary-ish amount of footage on Heinbach that I just haven't had a chance to edit. Wow. So don't pester me for a week or two.
Man's got videos to make.
But there's a lot of content. Yeah, really interesting process. But I like the idea of the tape thing as a creative process of just baking something in. It's back to that committing to stems and everything thought again.
What a wonderful thought to do all your Foley recording to cassette first.
Yeah.
It's like so doing all your sound, all the things you would use like the Zoom, an F4 or something, but trying it on cassette as well. Like that's wicked. And also, then there's the fetishism of like you must have looked into them and you've seen his, where they're like,
there's a ton
they're just
of
really beautiful.
dictaphones and
They're just like where you've got like a cassette, like the sort of 80s approach, like when you've got like phantom power mic pre's on a handheld cassette.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
I want that.
I was around at Matthew Shaw's and he's got some Seattle Lombard stuff. He's playing around with the Coco Qantas, the loop and delay.
Ooh.
He's got a dictaphone, and that thing just sings whenever, and it's got a mic on it as well. So it's the mic on the Coco Qantas to feed the input. And he'll just, we picked up a kalimba. He held the dictaphone to the kalimba. We then held the dictaphone to the mic, and instantly it's just like you're in this world.
Yeah,
and it's amazing. And you'd spend all day trying to replicate that from like hi-fi recording.
You literally just like mush these things together, do it in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the old Casio sampling keyboards that he'd picked up on eBay or something recently. And again, it was just, well, there's the mic that the unit samples on. All right, hold the dictaphone to it then.
Yeah.
And then we did something on it, and it's like, put it back in the dictaphone.
Yeah.
You can just build these, it just instantly sits you in this world. But you've got to kind of, it's going back to this idea of having creative days and kind of admin days and technical days. You need to learn all that stuff, because you could potentially ruin your work baking it in saturated tape beforehand. It just takes years as well. There's no fast way to do any of this.
You mean to do it well, or to
me trying to do what Heimbach does. Now that's not to say I'm even capable or would be in years of practice. Obviously it's personal. Heimbach's Heimbach. But if I tried to work like him with tape, I don't think the kind of output would be as interesting. I'm sure he spent enough time really nailing that and knowing which dictaphone. It's like knowing which mic to put in front of the guitar card.
Yeah.
Oh, this band's slightly heavier, so this mic's going to respond well. That's just experience, which just comes with time. Knowing which, Heimbach's doing a series on toy pianos. I imagine which, and he's got lots of toy pianos, which one he's going to record doesn't always go through the same mic and dictaphone.
Did you see that's a dulcitone, belonged to my great grandparents, which is basically tuning fork piano, which that's like one for dictaphones as well. Need to like bust that bad, but it's like all the keys are falling apart, like it needs mechanical work.
But it's interesting, this idea of time. I think with the technology, and speaking to Lightbath about this recently, that no one picks up a trumpet or violin and sounds good instantly. Those two, specifically a violin, is known as an instrument that takes years to get a nice note, regardless of being able to play. Yeah, but well, theremin's more along the line of a synth. The purity of the tone can be very good from the start. That first note you try violin.
Sorry, I totally see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and Lightbath said, you can plug an oscillator in and it give you the purest, nicest sine or richest saw or whatever. That creates an illusion, I think, of well, these oscillators and filters sound amazing.
I'm done.
Or so the music I'm making is good, or so this patch is good, or it almost takes the intention away, I think, of just, well, it just sounds good. So it's like, there's a track.
You mean you don't work as hard on the melody? You don't work as hard. It's like sculpting and arranging.
Yeah, it creates an illusion of, and it's interesting, droning oscillator isn't that interesting for much time, but it's an illusion of, well, that sounds good. So they maybe don't exploit it.
I've had that where I've done stuff with, like I made a piano sound set using my parents' piano, which is in the next building, which is 130. It's like the piano's older than the house. It's like 18. Actually, not older than the house, but like 1870s. It's got a beautiful tone, and I would basically record one of every note badly, including birdsong in the background, and then put it into Contact in like time stretch mode, and just time stretched it massively. And just playing stuff. I remember someone listening to it. I was like, "That's nice." He said, "But you could almost have just played anything, and it would sound nice through that."
Yeah, there is a beauty in that.
Thanks,
I'm not
mate.
saying that it needs a musical composition to make it sound good. I like a lot of just drone and obviously nice sounds, but the kind of work and intent, I think, with Modulus sometimes disappears.
Do you mean that people don't have intent?
Yeah, I think so. Myself included. You do some things and then you listen back the day after and you're like,
what was I trying to do?
Yeah. But if the instrument didn't immediately sound good, if that was me trying to play a violin, I'd know it was rubbish from the off, because I'd be like, that's just not good. I think the work and the experience makes those simple things better, which is what I guess I'm kind of getting at with Time Back, of just knowing that just recording that thing on that piece of equipment will give you several minutes of interesting musical information. It's just a time and experience thing, I think.
Yeah. No, well, I kept thinking about the Brian Eno quote where he's like, it takes a minute to learn how to play a synthesizer. It takes a lifetime to learn how not to play a synthesizer. Yeah. It's that sort of...
It's back to structure and dance tracks again. I mean, it's not to say everyone that makes dance music has to be a DJ, but they know what's going to work because they've been playing it and trying their own tracks.
Yeah.
And that's just a time and experience thing.
Yeah.
We kind of need to, I think, just almost slow down a bit and just accept things are going to take a while.
I think the analogy, but part of it is that thing about... there's another quote, there's like Ira Glass quote where he talks about how, when you start anything, I might be him, maybe I'm attributing it, but he's like, when you start anything, the problem is you've got really good taste. You know what good sounds like, and you know that what you're making doesn't sound like that, which is that, and it's almost like uncanny valley and sort of CG effects. It's like you've got to get past this point where it isn't right long enough to get to the point where you realise that you're good at what it is, and then you're kind of off and you can improve in other ways. But it's, I suppose that's a question I can put to you is like, how did you get over the uncanny valley of like, because it's when you start out, it's just, you need to have a bit of an ego where you're like, I'm actually quite good at this. It's sort of, I suppose that's a good thing about electronic music is it is very gratifying. Like the oscillator does sound good. But learning to wield it as part of a composition and use it in innovative ways takes time.
Yeah, well, just before we get to me about that, things can sound good. Someone might just turn something on and do something really great straight off the bat. But is that the best that they're capable of? Or is that the best thing they've got in them? Maybe not. And I guess the illusion with modular is that you maybe don't get past that because you haven't had to work at it. I'm not doing this, but I might just be putting out simple little sketches that are very little effort, but people might really like them. Now, if I work at it that bit more, there might be something better in there. I always like this kind of idea of there's more to come. Yeah. It's that kind of everlasting learning and it all feeds around. The ego thing, I don't know. I don't know when I started to think this is good enough.
Well, you were sort of forced to because you took a year off to like make yourself. Yeah. You did your 10,000 hours in that year, basically, didn't you?
But by that point, I'd had a couple of years of putting out dance tracks, so it was, and I could look back and be like, regardless of the style, the production on that isn't good enough. That goalpost is always moving. It's like anything playing in a band, and you think we're really good, we're a great indie band. Why aren't we getting good gigs? And the more of them you do, the more you realise. You're not that good. You're really not good. or the recordings aren't as good as they could be, or whatever. You kind of, it's always analysing and moving forward, I think. But in terms of putting stuff out, there is a point where, like, from then on, I'm happy with the output. Now, again, it's funny, earlier I said you wouldn't find any of my early stuff and it's embarrassing. I mean, it's not. That's just young and naive me. And it happened to get released. That, all right, that isn't what I'd show anyone. But there are things from years back that I wouldn't be happy with. Yeah. What that turning point is, I'm not sure.
What would also give you the sort of proclivity to electronic music, do you think? Why are you drawn to this at all? That's the other thing.
I don't know. Like,
what appeals?
It started, my mum's record collection, probably. We were used to music being a big part of just life, really. And there's a lot of vinyl records that, had CD player at the time or cassette deck or whatever. And me and my sister and some friends off the street, we'd just like dance around the front room. But that was always to turntable, to vinyl. It was always, we'll get a record out, we'll put this on. And it might be I Want to Break Free by Queen or something, and we'd prance around the room or whatever. But it was that was an intentional thing, and there was enough kind of variety in that, I guess. But I don't really know why dance music. I mean, I was playing in like pop punk cover bands.
Because your background is more like band production, playing instrument, like real
So I started playing,
instruments, not just fake things.
None of that fake stuff. So I started playing drums at about 10, 11. Guitar not long after that. I've been this tall since I was 11. So I was playing in varying widths and depths, but I've been this tall since I was about 11 or 12, about 6'2" or something when I was about 12. So,
oh mate, wow.
So, and my friends were a bit older. So just as they were trying to get into pubs and playing gigs, I kind of just tagged along. And parents were supportive enough of, no, go out, be safe, enjoy yourself, go out, go and go play gigs. And there are enough venues around that until 10, you could be in there underage anyway, and then bouncers would kind of sweep the room and kick all the kids out kind of thing. So I used to play gigs while I was at school, and we used to sell tickets for, £4 a gig, and we got £2 of that back after we'd sold 20. So it was, you get all of your classmates to come, and all the friends in other year groups do that, and we used to do all right. There's a funny period of I got paid more as a kid playing, not covers like, it's still a case of you can do well playing in a function band and a wedding band and all that kind of thing, but just playing like pub covers and a couple of originals more than the better original music that I might have created when I was 18 in a band. And it was but it was just this thing of, well, all the kids could come at that point. Venues would allow it till, like I said, 10 or whatever. You could go and just walk around school, send tickets to people. Do you want to come to a gig?
You've got a ready-made audience.
But that was like, it's kind of punk and then pop punk-ish kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'd be listening to like Paul Oakenfold or just kind of whatever I could get hold of.
It's the
Fatboy Slim,
the Absidic story. You've got like then you sort of getting from guitars.
Yeah, the Fatboy Slim thing, and then Daft Punk and stuff like that. And I remember another kind of weird turning point of like there's all those videos now of where all the Daft Punk samples are from, and you're like, it is exactly the same thing with a big cook over it. There's not much to it at all.
Oh yeah. It's frightening how like similar it is, but people get really like uppity about that. But I'm like,
I don't care. It's repurposed. It's
recontextualized. Yeah. It's like it's just being a DJ. It's just a somewhat more like laser guided form of DJing where you're like, that bit is amazing. Let's just loop that bit, and that could be the tune. Right.
I guess the way into it was probably just through technology, in that I used to really like playing with amps and guitar pedals, and then having Cubase VST3, I think I started recording into, and Reason 2.5, and we were quite lucky in school that we'd have to, I remember something from school, we had to remake an ABBA track. We were given a notated score. I think it wasn't GCSE music. I think it was maybe the year before I did GCSEs. And it was, here's this ABBA score. I can't remember what song it was. Get that notation into MIDI. So it was kind of the first challenge. And then it was remake the sounds.
Wow.
So you load up Reason version 2.5.
Did like a synth remix of ABBA.
Yeah. But
there were synths in ABBA.
And that, that put a lot of the class off, I think, because they're like, I don't like ABBA, and maybe I don't like Sims. So it put them off technology. I really liked it.
That's always that is a classic exercise, isn't it? Try and remake a tune that you love will teach you something about. Yeah. A bit like doing the match EQ with something will teach you something about the way it was assembled and what elements a functional tune needs.
And I still love pedals and stuff like that, but I think that was the way in. And I used to balance rack gear on top of my guitar amp. It had the handle on top, so it was always like wobbling on top. And,
nice.
And, can I bring a MIDI verb home from school or whatever? A little Tascam mixing desk. It's probably still around my parents somewhere. That great era of Tascam where it just had these soft, like orange and green colours to it. It's all brown.
Really good aesthetics.
All brown.
Yeah.
But it's got the great colour knobs on it. I keep meaning to pull that out. And
what,
see
the aesthetic?
Pull the Tascam. I think it's still at my parents in the loft or something. Does it have a sound? It's only 6 tracks.
Is it a cassette one?
No, it's just a mixer. But I'm just wondering, like, plumbing modular tracks in, could that be interesting at home?
Oh, is it? Yeah, I've been looking at. There is someone was like trying to sell me one of those, like TASCAM, like a really nice, TIAC. It's like a TIAC brand.
Yes,
it's like pre-TASCAM, and it's like, is it like that big?
No, it's a little smaller.
Yeah, there's some really like obviously like the broadcast consoles like. There's that Alice 828 that everyone's like goes nutso over, which is like little, like very a professional device. It's like a professional broadcast console with like 6 or 8 mic pre's, but everyone's like, it's like a poor man's Neve, and it's got like a overall compressor that apparently sounds like absolutely like slamming.
Yeah, a friend has I think it was Tascam and not TIAC, but it's bigger than this table. A big mixing desk that Salford Uni, when he was at uni, was getting rid of. And he was like, can I have it? And they went, if it's gone in an hour.
Oh my God.
Like, we've got facilities coming with a van to move this. We don't want it here. You know, it's 4 in the afternoon. It's going at close of play today. So he went and hired a van.
He went an estate car or
he went and hired
really big estate.
He went and hired a van.
Oh, nice.
He was like, I'm going to... And he'd lived in Salford, I think, just drove it to his parents back in Bradford or Leeds. Can't remember where he grew up, but then went back to uni and was like, I've got this mix.
I've been looking at, what are the desks there? Midas, like, you know, my
is it Venice?
Venice, yeah, the Venice, like 16, 24 and 32, and they're not a lot of money. They go for
they're
like
big now.
$100,000.
No one wants that big mixing desk.
Well, but the Venices are really small because they're like live desks, so they're actually, you know, like Matthew Johnson uses one. It's like even 32 is like that big. It's like not very big, and it's very powerful in terms of what it does.
So are you wanting to mix on that and commit stereo mixes?
Basically, just like
computers a tape machine.
Use the computer, stem everything out, and then just submix on the mixer, just to sort of almost like I'm just so bad at mixing. I feel like if I can use any trick to sort of, as you say, like with stems, like just kind of force the process, commit a little bit, and just say, well, that was shit. Let's do it all from scratch again. It will be faster to do it on the desk than to do it, you know, in live, just mousing. And also just like fader rides and stuff like that. Just being able to do a bit of that stuff. I'm writing automation, and part of like writing automation when, you know, if you're drawing curves, you can't draw curves while it's playing back. You know, you need to assign a MIDI knobby thing. And maybe I should just get like a, you know, PreSonus fader port or something, but it's just kind of thinking it's so cheap relatively, like for the price of one posh module, I could have a 24 track mixing console and just have a go at this and just sell it if it doesn't work. Yeah,
you probably wouldn't lose anything on it.
No.
I don't know if I want that kind of big mixing thing. I don't mind, and I don't know if it's just, again, a bit like this, you have to know you're bad then good and blah blah blah, this curve. I don't know if it's that with experience with production. I don't mind it. I don't particularly like looking at Logic 10, but it's quick and it's a means to an end, and I don't mind mixing on it.
If you've like learned to you've mastered it truly. Like then,
well, it was. I went to uni, and it was. They pretty much said you're all going to buy a MacBook, and this is what you're using for your course. Yeah. We just use this Logic. And some people went, well, I've got Cubase on a PC laptop, and you know they were allowed to use that, but we were pretty much just told, this is what you're going to use. And it was at that turning point when Pro Tools wasn't quite the industry standard. I mean, it still kind of is to a degree for audio work,
but in studios,
you know, other DAWs have kind of caught up now to a degree. There was a point where it's like, if you're doing audio, you're using Pro Tools. And
do you agree that Logic and Pro Tools have a sound? Like, does Live have a sound?
My mixes sound different out of both, but that's my approach.
Are you using the built-in EQs and all that sort of stuff, or are you using all the same?
Potentially. I mean, my approach to them is really different. I write very differently in both. Really differently. But out of habit, and I don't know if it's a sound thing, maybe subconsciously it is, I do take audio out of Ableton and mix it in Logic. I've never finished, and maybe 1 or 2 pieces, very rarely finish anything in Ableton. That's not because it's not capable, it's just for me.
Well, Deadmau5, he mixes in Ableton.
Yeah, well, I think he's a lot of people doing stuff for him, and it's not all just quite.
Has he got some ghosts in his basement of his mansion? He's got some like mix mice.
Yeah, a whole LAN of that team of people. I don't know, but you can't say it's bad. It might be different, but that comes down to the code. A friend of mine used to release his music. He's kind of gone off on his own. A lad called Harvey makes dubstep and goes off touring and all this kind of stuff. And you remember him saying to me, it's just like a big calculator. It can't sound different. That was kind of his view, you know, years back. That was kind of the view of, it's just a big audio calculator. It can't sound different. But didn't Live change version 7 or 8? And they did say something kind of internally changed.
And it could be that they just added like
invisible headroom.
Well, they just like rescaled the faders so that you could never clip out the thing. But Yeah, I think they added more headroom, and apparently it did sound different. But I sort of agree. I would agree with Harvey in the sense that, like, if you cannot get a good mix out of any modern DAW, it's not the DAW's fault.
No, there may be minute differences in sound, but that's not the issue.
They're not the issue to you not producing amazing
I've never
mixes.
tried it. I've never kind of taken, say, a stem mix, like 8 parts, and gone, here, I'm just going to use...
Like, Unity
But the
gain
thing
on
is,
every
if-
channel, does it sound better or worse?
Yeah, but even, you can't say, well, I'll use stock plugins, because then you're listening to Logic EQ, compression,
and that
whatever.
has in it. And certainly, like, in live, warping clips...
I think that's a big part of the sound.
That is a big thing. When people like live sounds mushy, well, it may if you warp things
that you've all
unnecessarily.
stretched a bit, yeah.
You know, but warping in live can sound great as well, and like, especially using like beat mode warping on things like super slowing it down or like doing to become a really good effect. Like, it just sounds good. Like, it's.
I remember Funk Agenda, House DJ, saying years back, "Has anyone bouncing out of their DAW at a really bad MP3 rate and bringing it back as an effect?" And I was like, no, but I'm going to do that. So you bounce out like a 92-bit per second MP3 and just drop it in for a bar, like a kind of filter effect.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Like doing like vinyl, like slowdowns on a thing where you have to like export the whole mix to like make that effect work.
I remember BT doing a loading terminal up on the Mac, and he said you can just kind of type any old rubbish into that. And he kind of goes through it. There is a video for it, and he's like, you just type something in, and it will just spit audio back like a raw, basic audio process, and it gives you some like bit mangled garbage. And he's like, but listen to the low end in that, and you're like, oh shit, that's really cool. He clearly knows what he's doing. But he's like, you can load up these primitive, crude tools and treat it like sample fodder. I love that term, sample fodder. I've said it in a few videos when I'm just using like sample and hold on a module or whatever. It's like, this is amazing sample fodder.
Yeah.
I sampled out a load of Dinky's Tycho stuff, and I think I had 4 or 5 sample and holds just in time with a hit. Unique sample and holds, not the same one, and just plugged it in. I'm like, that's how I'm going to sample that unit. And I'm just going to let it run for 2 minutes. And then we're like, there's way more in that than if I was trying to deep sample every potential knob combination.
Yeah. You mean just let randomness take care of it and just pick the best bits?
I think it's a really good way. I'm filming a demo for the little syncussion thing at the minute.
Oh, I want that syncussion thing.
It's great. And it's a really good way of just going, in 30 seconds, hundreds of sounds are going to fly past us, and this gives you a flavour of it. Just sample and hold the hell out of it, and you're like, ooh, there's a tom, there's a blip, there's a kick, there's a noise hit, there's a whatever.
I've got... I'm thinking about like a new live system that involves the DFAM, where it's like based around the DFAM and some nutty percussion and like, you know, BIA and a couple of syncussions and like some samples and some stereo delay for that and a really murderous solid kick.
Will you have some, talk about drums a lot with people for modular, will you have some kind of pinning down elements to that? Because if everything is... You take a Basimilus and that and something else, and you're modulating all 3 of them. Nothing is constant. There's no musical pinning tonally or to kind of get anything to it. A good example is Detache's album System.
Right.
Beats 2 and 4 always have a clap on it. Yeah. So it's like whatever Aphex style
is
going on, there's always just this like feel to it, and that sound is constant. I think
I will almost certainly have like a clap. Like that's what I've done in my current live system is have a clap on 2 and 4,
a familiar basic sound.
Option. Yeah. Because you otherwise you lose the downbeat, and it's like in the insanity.
Or a 909 offbeat hi-hat. It just gives you this freedom that everything else can be quite chaotic,
but there's
some pinning.
I will have to have that. But I was
and you could do them on any of those. You could take a Basimilus and make this your own bass drum and just keep triggering it.
I kind of wanted like a Eurorack module, and this exists. I'm sure. I've not actually done my research, but just like preset rhythms with buttons to just flip between them. I just want like offbeat ride, offbeat hi hat, 4/4 kick. Do you know what I mean? So you can just go make that very, very time honored rhythm that works happen right now because we need to like bring this thing back to normality. So I am like there is some work to be done to like develop that. But
you could patch it, but it's all for a live system. Then you're committing a lot of space to being able to get that quickly. I don't know how you do. I mean,
there will be there are like launch codes, antimatter launch codes.
Yeah, and
apparently.
stuff. Even like grids. If you had grids and a pressure points,
I have thought about putting grids in is one big sort of thought, but then with grids it's hard to like go, I just want that pattern.
Well, that's why you'd need the pressure points, and you'd have to pull the knobs off so you never knock them.
Oh, I see.
There we go.
So
that pad sends 3 voltages in. That reference. That
I feel like you'd be better off with a preset rhythm module that could do.
Yeah, because then if you move something on grids, those 3 voltages no longer give you. Exactly. What you wanted them to be. It's too fluid of a system.
But you could, you're right to use pressure points as like just a patch memory. Although, yeah, I think maybe I'd be using that new ADAC thing. Could be a good patch memory source.
Yeah, but again, it relies on, it might be a reliable voltage source, but
secrets. Sorry.
But it relies on, same with pressure points, any of these, you can know that, right, this is 0.7 of a volt, and that's that rhythm on the module. Change the module, it's gone.
Yeah.
You need that.
I don't know,
but maybe
it has to be done via play testing. Really, it's like with all these things. It's
and maybe that's why you just need that rhythm on a divider or something into a switch. So
I just basically want a button that can always take me back to it, and just be your switch multiple or something. So on one side of the switch multiple, it will always give you like your stock rhythm. But on the other side is lies and sanity, so that you've always got the ability to just return to a familiar home.
Yeah, but you need that several times over, don't you? You need, there's the 4/4 kick for doing techno. Here, I can play around, but I can always switch back. Same for 2/4 clap, offbeat, hi-hat, whatever.
I'd really like to, one thing I have trying to like unpack is Stevio's like maraca shuffle pattern. Like, if you listen to like, I need
know his maraca.
Right, I need you to like, because you're the like, you as the sort of drum programming master will be able to like, just be like, oh, it's just like you could just draw it in live in like 2 seconds. What it actually is, like the actual rhythm of his pattern and the velocity of each note, the actual rise and crest and fall, because there is very much
velocity and dynamic is a big thing.
There's dynamics in
modular
his drum, which I just don't know how he's doing.
That with that syncussion, I was chatting to Raf from Michigan Synthworks, and he said vary the trigger going in, because that was made for either triggers on an acoustic kit or pads, which it was.
So what, the lower trigger will lower the volume?
And that's a real faithful recreation of the syncussion. It responds to anything you throw in. Just chuck your normal 5-volt gate, trigger, clock, whatever, it's fine. But I ran a 16th note trigger, just basic clock signal, through a VCA, use step random, or it could be just 8-step sequence. But then what I had to do was attenuate that further to get it into a workable range.
Right, okay, yeah.
So you could see these,
like
I had it on the Mordax data, and you could see these ticks are constant, the triggers are constant, they're then moving around as you'd expect. But it didn't really give as much of a response. And then I was thinking, well, does a drum pad give 5 volts? Probably not.
It gives about half a volt or something.
So it was that. But then that in it is awkward. I mean, it's great in modular and in a big case and at home, but if you needed a trigger to that one drum module, and it's not fault of that module, most modules don't even do it anyway, you'd need a VCA channel, a velocity source or random or stepped sequence source, and the original trigger source, and another attenuator.
To make it all work.
To make it do it, yeah. And all right, that might only be, excluding the sequence or the random, like 4 HP or 8 HP, just a dual channel thing. But it is work.
Just to get like, just get a drummer to play it.
But it's great, because especially that syncussion recreation, a bit like a 303 with the accent, it's more than just the volume that's changing.
Yeah, it's timbral.
Yeah, like a real instrument. It's brighter, it's more present, it's more transient rich, and it's just like, oh no, that's nice. You can mimic it on other stuff, but then it's an interesting mix thing again, that the further away something is, it's duller.
Yeah.
So if you had a low pass filter and a VCA, a low pass gate would do the job. It will push it back. It'll feel like it's pushing back in the depth of the mix as well as the volume.
That's all. Yeah, make things sit like further away. Make them duller. That makes sense.
But then, I know Chris Meyer does this with low pass gates. He likes complex percussion modules, Simulus, whatever, through a low pass gate. Yeah. And I'm like, but why do I want 2 modules that's that big to do this thing? And he's like, because you can strike the gate. You've just so much more control. Yeah. And that's kind of the advantage of modular.
Well, like adding room reverb, you start to get into like an uncanny valley where it really does sound and respond more like a real acoustic instrument. Yeah. It's like almost like tickling your ears and like, oh my, what is that? Like, is that real? Like,
yeah, and if you've taken a lot of low end out of that reverb we was talking about earlier, and the sound is duller, it's not going to excite that reverb as much. So when that one hard hit comes that's bright, the reverb splashes.
Yeah.
It's like a vocal. They'll say something that will then open up the effect.
yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay.
That's how that Eventide T-verb is just all about that. Like, where you sing louder into it, it actually opens up more room reverb.
Okay.
It's like, actually, like, it's like simulates having 3 mics, each with a gate applied to the mic, so that if you sing louder, you'll trigger the furthest away.
Right, okay. Yeah, because we're not going to excite the other side of this room at this level of talking.
But we could.
If we shout, it would.
It would, exactly.
It's funny, sidechaining reverb against the dry input is a really good trick for production. That really came to the front with like Martin Garrix's Animals, that clicky lead thing. That's just that huge tuned pitched bass drum and a click. And when EDM kind of blew up in America, that kind of era of dance stuff. But there's so much reverb on it, but the dry sound pushes through. And I'd not tried it until then.
He's just literally ducking the reverb. Oh, you mean he's ducking the input signal, so the reverb
So
has
you
a dip into it.
send the sound into the reverb, compressor on that reverb channel, and you sidechain that compressor against the dry sound.
Okay.
Because when your dry sound hits, the reverb ducks and comes back in. So it means you can have a really dry, present sound. You can have something smacking your face.
I see.
That's covered in a ton of reverb.
The Eventide Space has got a ducked reverb sound, which does that.
kind
So
of
when you
ducks
sing in,
against
the
its own
reverb
input.
goes away, and then it pulls in. Yeah.
And it isn't that you want to hear it fade in like a big pre-delay or something, but it's such a great mix.
It makes everything mix better.
And sidechaining everything as well. Thinking about a band that's got keys and guitar, if the guitars take over in the chorus, you sidechain the keys against the guitar, just so it just nudges. It's also like automatic mix control. The vocals come in, so the keys that are in that same octave just take a couple of dB back.
Everything beds.
Yeah, you don't have to have that thing so loud because they all just bed. You can, like the EQ, we spoke a lot about production stuff. You can go way too far with all this, obviously, but just a couple of dB of all this stuff, and it's like it's all just sitting really nice.
Yeah.
It's same with, I find it really helpful with modular, the sidechain thing. If I'm layering it, because the modular can be everything. It can be the whole track. It can be every frequency. It's so wide ranging that it needs taming. You find this interestingly, a couple of people trying to do, and people doing it all around the world, trying to get modular jams going. So you bring your live case and I make one up and bring mine. We're going to be all over each other. But you take like the London Modular Alliance approach. I think they used to do that, but then at one point,
they separate out. They
drummer, bass player, riffs and effects,
leads and effects, Buchler, easel player, and
and then it's like that then works.
That's You all have to be very respectful musicians to not sort of mush over each other, basically. Or be very, very accomplished mix engineers
and even
as well,
if kind of compositional choices are respectful of each other, you can't have every synth line can't be a Moog sound. It's just too big of a sound. You can't make it's almost like you can't make that instrument respect everyone else. You can with your choices, but it's just the bottom end is just so fat on those things. It's like it just doesn't work. And that's nothing against Moog, just that is the sound of it.
Yeah.
You take something thinner, and it's not thin like it sounds bad thin, that's almost like people take that as a negative word, like the Yamaha CS range. It just sits in a mix. But it won't do the bass thing quite like a Moog.
Yeah. Doesn't have like that.
But they'd work great together.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. Because I've only really played with like the CS80 once, and that was somewhat religious experience.
I know Chris Randall said that about the CS range before or not long after I tried a CS5. Matthew Shaw's got a CS15. Right. Lovely filter on it.
Yeah. Really
nice.
It's an interesting sounding machine.
Yeah.
Like really gnarly. I've got like sort of 10-minute jam of that from like 2001, like where it's like the first analog. That was actually the first analog synth I ever played with. That and an SH1000. Quite good at intro because the SH1000 filter is absolutely amazing, and I don't know whether it's the same as like the SH5 or 9 or whatever, but the 1000 just has a gnarly filter, like really, really nice. And it looks like a home organ. It really doesn't look like a cool synth, but it bloody is.
But again, it's this experience thing again of a really good engineer knows what mic's going to work in what situation. You can't, if you just don't own one synth, and I'm not saying everyone goes and buys loads of synths, it might not be the right thing for the job. It's just that experience thing of that's not going to work in that context. Or, you know, if you were building a chord, you might not want to layer up a Model D to play a 6-voice chord in your sampler because it's going to be too big. Maybe the 101's a better choice for that.
I'd pass it.
Yeah, there's something about it more than that, though, I think.
I suppose it depends what tone you've created. If it's very bright and buzzy, it can overlap everything else. Yeah. Because it can just fill the whole frequency range.
The other nice thing, thinking about this reverb and creating a fake room for electronic stuff, the other nice one, and it might have been an Ian Shepherd thing, productionadvice.co.uk or whatever the site is, or somewhere else, I can't remember, that speaker emulation is also very good at that. If you don't want any sense of space added to it, but you want something to unify a load of separate sounds that have never seen real life, running it through a speaker emulation in the background.
Like speakerphone.
Yeah, or guitar amp emulator on as clean as you can get it, and just send a little bit of everything to it. And it's like, oh, I've got this fuzzy gel.
Yeah.
And then push it right back.
So, I think we'll wrap up, but I was going to ask you some like quick fire
Yeah, go, because we just...
That's fine.
You made coffee, we sat down, we started talking, and you started recording.
I don't know how long...
Conversation
I haven't started recording. 2 hours. So quick fire round to wrap up. Favourite piece of kit and why?
Depends on the day and the job. I know it's a real non-answer.
That's a non-answer. One like studio... well... All right, we talked a lot about mixing, so favourite thing for mixing?
Favourite thing, again, it's really... I don't want to give loads of non-answers. I know you need an answer.
I don't need an answer.
No, you do. I don't know. Stock plugins, I guess. I like... There's a ton of great plugins, but I like just using stock stuff, just to softly shape things. I'm not too precious about chain.
You don't need
We
to
spoke
have a
about
super
mastering,
posh.
and we were talking about Nathan Moody does this, having 2 compressors not working as hard. All right, there are things that I like for certain jobs, but just access to functions you kind of work with.
Do you mean after having one kind of LA2A style compressor and then one 1176E and using...
Yeah, but I'm not too fussed about it being the Waves emulation that might be richer or better. Better and best. I hate that what's the best for this. It's subjective. There isn't an answer to that. There's no definitive answer to what's the best filter.
Yeah.
There is no answer.
Yeah.
So without... that's why I'm finding these
That's like saying, like, what's the best music?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I don't know.
The stock plugin, that's a good thing to say.
Kind of stock plugins. It's a
just
nice
don't be precious
answer.
and just use everything a little bit.
That's what I tell kids at school and college that I've worked at or still work at. My mixes don't sound right. And it's like you said about which DAW. If you can't get something half decent, it's not the software.
Yeah.
It's not the piece of kit. It's like any bit of kit. You'll get it like I do making videos. Oh, you never say a bad word about these modules. It's like, because they're not bad modules. There's nothing bad
to say about them. Or any like drawback should be self-apparent for like the fact it doesn't have a... It's not got 5 oscillators, it's got 2. Yeah. That's obvious. Like, and it's not a ding because it's never... No one ever said it wasn't meant to... it was meant to have 5 oscillators.
Yeah, I think that we're in such a great time, and I'm not that old that I've lived through not having nice tools, but everything it all just kind of works.
Yeah, like everything does. Like, and if something doesn't work, it probably didn't get released.
I had good teachers that used to say, like, just go buy a few SM58s, and if you can't record anything and it sound all right, it's you. It's your mic placement.
Yeah.
And that's all I had. I didn't have any money to do it, so I think we had like 2 SM58s, and it was like, right, we'll throw one in the bass drum and we'll put one here. Oh no, the cymbals sound bad. All right, we'll move it near at the snare.
Yeah.
I was encouraged a lot. I've been really lucky to have some really good teachers and good experiences of music education.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't, and there's a lot of things now saying don't go study music and blah, 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 but I had a good experience.
Favourite synth and why?
That's not modular.
Yes, that's not modular.
I really love my SH09.
Oh, yeah.
It's really simple.
The SH9 is like the black one with the like silvery sort of...
it's just got this something. It's one oscillator with a sub, one envelope, which is always a pain when the VCA and the filter have to be the same.
It's basically a 101, but with more like 70s-y parts, because it will be not ICs or not many ICs.
It's very, very similar, but it just has this, the filter's just got this bottom end to it.
It's probably the same as the SH1000. It might be, because it's the same era, isn't it? Like,
I'm not sure.
Like late... That's like 79, isn't
the
it?
01 feels, and I know it looks more like this, but I'm not going on the way it looks. It just sounds a bit more plasticky, which is great for the 90s dance stuff, because it would just cut in the mixes maybe a bit more than the 09 would. I have a real soft spot for that, and I don't know why.
SH9. I've never actually played on one.
Should have brought it.
Should have brought it. Could have put it next to the DFM.
The other one, just to shout out, a really unloved, horrible beige-looking thing, the Akai AX73.
Oh yeah.
Had a Juno, got rid of it. The AX73 is like its dirty little cousin that's been left outside to rot a bit.
I really want the what's the Akai AX90?
That's different.
The one with the vacuum screen.
Yeah,
the black one. You're talking about the white one that looks like the SH1000 keyboard version. It's like a big, it's a big beige keyboard. It looks horrific.
Horrible interface, but I want someone to cut it down.
But it's an analog polysynth.
I need to get in touch with like Sam Look Mum No Computer and go, would you chop this to bits and give me a sound module back? This would be good content for your channel. And I need someone to hack it and just make me the module. It's just 6-voice poly. It's like a Juno. It's great.
Does it like respond to CCs?
I'm not sure.
You could just like make an iPad editor or something for it.
Yeah, it's not too bad. There's not enough to go through for it to be that bad, to just kind of left-right filter cut off on the slider. There's enough.
But why do you like
can
the sound?
save patches.
What's like, when you say it's dirty, in what way is it dirty?
I don't know, it's kind of grittier than the Juno. It's maybe not as warm. But
it's probably all the same.
Not
some of the same.
Far off.
Yeah.
The chorus is the exact same.
It's probably
noise.
just like the same chips. It's like the SEM chip or whatever.
I don't know if it's been put together cheaper, if some parts are lower tolerances. I have
different
no
gain
idea.
staging or whatever, yeah.
Maybe my unit's just got a load of diode. Maybe it just needs recapping. Maybe mine just needs some
You need to come over and have a go on one of those.
Maybe mine just needs work. I don't know.
Cool. That's it. You've got basically great bass synth and a great like poly.
That 09's great. It's really good. But it's one of the first that I got. It was the first kind of vintagey bit of kit that I got.
You were like, this does that.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, even like, I'd just been using VA synths, and then when I heard the CS5 and that SH1000, I was like, oh man, these do sound really good.
Original micro brute as well. I still got that.
Yeah.
Great.
Micro brute, not the mini. Oh, you mean the mini brute?
No, micro.
The micro,
brute.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I used the micro brute with like the band. So that is an absolute, like, that's a real example of how good things are these days. That if you're just starting out and you're like, I want a dirty little gnarly analog synth, then it's like 250 quid and you can have one brand new in box. It's like ridiculous. It's like absurd. And with like a SH101E sequencer, like, yeah, it's like badass. So
I'll try and be more quick fire.
No, okay, let's go super quick fire. In a new section that I've created just for you called Your Favourite Eurorack Modular Stuff and Why. Because everyone will be like, I want a kit list of what to buy. Because they want to know what the best VCO and best filter is. What's your favourite VCO and why?
Again, it depends on context. So I really like...
You're only allowed to take one. Desert Island.
I can only take one.
You can only take one.
So in that case, then I'd try to get something. I can't quickfire this. I'm trying to think of an answer as I'm talking. Something that will cover a big range. So I would immediately go digital.
Yeah.
Just to afford a range
That's
of.
the correct answer. Yeah. That's what it is.
And not choice. To just be.
I don't want to lead you, but you know.
No, I mean, I really like the E370 from Synthtech. I had a friend borrow it. Just said the tone of it wasn't for them, but you can write and draw your own wavetables and put them in it. So I was like, all right, maybe the tables are too smooth. Maybe unlike, say, a Piston Honda, they're not harsh. Just make some harsh ones and put it in. And I don't think I kind of had it back before I had a chance to go through it. But Platts, braids. I mean, braids gets a lot of stick. And
why?
Platts does.
Who sticks braids?
You see them up for sale years ago, loads. It's great. It's just a flavour of all these different things.
What can you go wrong with? Like, it's a CS80 saw. It sounds really good. It's a saw. Or like the dirty like wavefoldery. It's like,
all right, one way to look at this for the Desert Island thing, it's almost like what do you use to make demos when you need stuff to hand?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good.
So that's maybe a good way to look at it. Yeah, Platts, the AGH oscillators. I know you only want one answer. If I had to make a case to do demos, like a 6U case, where I could put any one module in that would give me enough, I'd probably chuck Platts in.
Yeah, good shout. Favourite mixer?
Euro mixer.
Yeah.
I use the Bafako most for
the
demos.
Bafako
Hex Mix.
Yes, mate. That is, but that's more of an overall. Yeah, I suppose I do mean overall mixer. Yeah.
Bigger mixer. I can give you a smaller mixer answer as well. Smaller mixer, the Manhattan Analog CP3, like with
the CP3 one.
Yeah, not the clean one.
I've got the clean. I really like the clean one actually. It's just great. For like adding things together. It does it super clean.
But the fact that you get to a point on that CP3 and it clips. It's great with CV. You can add a hold stage to an ADSR.
Oh, by that.
So if you think you've got ADSR,
it'll squidge up the top.
You want to just squash that top and give that front a bit of more. You get more of a transient out of it because it's for that few milliseconds. It's actually just fully on flat as a hold stage.
Yeah.
Or put an ADSR in or an AD and an LFO and let the LFO push the range up enough that the envelope's going to clip.
I see, yeah.
Great, really creative tool. It's great just to go, I want a little bit of clipping on everything. It's a great little drum sub-mixer. But yeah, bigger one. I do like the WMD as well because you've CV over everything.
Yeah, so you can do like kind of ambient.
I know I'm giving you another non-answer.
No, but that's like, that is a good, like being able to, like the WMD performance mixer seems like the one for people who want the modular to be a generative.
If you're going to CV everything,
exactly that.
If you just want, a nice way of bringing like a stereo mix together, the EQ on that Bafako is great.
But also the fact it's got 3 sends and stereo returns. That is the deal maker for me because it's like nothing else has that many sends and returns and actually does it properly.
One that I'll have a video coming of probably by the time this is online to throw another thing in the mix. Strange Science Instruments.
Never heard.
Which I saw Schneider's lad and kind of quoting as this is a Swayman style. They have a stereo filter and a mixer. It's quite big. It's 4 channels, but you CV over the pan and the volume. A stereo pass through if you want to bring a stereo mix in. It's a nice way of expanding itself. But it works with CV as well. And doing feedbacky stuff with it has been really good. That's made me a bit more creative. And I think that's purely because I have to make a demo for it. So I've gone, once I've put 4 things in and gone, here's my mix.
What else can I do?
What else do I do? So I chose to use it just recording the left output, patch the right output back in on itself and trying to make like feedback drones. And so that's another nice one to look at, to plug on upcoming video as well. But I don't know, I use the Bafako the most.
Bafako mixer for live mixing of all of the stems of your mutes, drum, which the mutes are like the whole thing is really like on point.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
And there's something coming with those mutes, I should say.
Really?
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. You can add a little bit of that flavour, that muty goodness. To your system.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know.
Yes, I actually do know
anything yet.
Okay.
I think I'm at a point where I can start teasing.
It's a cool thing that's coming.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's the best filter?
Again, if I try and go like most used, what
filter have you used the most?
I refuse to say best, but probably Ripples. And again, people are going to slam on me, just going, it's just mutable again. But the fact there's a VCA built in, so I can quickly turn that 8 HP module to a kick. Because I can VCA it, I can it oscillates. It doesn't have a high pass. You can make a high pass. Interestingly,
you can do the feedbacky.
You invert it.
That's how the Mother 32 high pass works. It's like it sort of feeds it. It doesn't work if it's resonant.
The AGH filter I use a ton, just to throw a couple more out. The Chaos Devices Belgrade's great. There's a ton of...
But Ripples, like they're sort of precise, like with a VCA, like just does the biz.
To give you 2, Humpback from God's Box.
Oh, like the semi one.
Another 8, but that will drive.
It does sound really good, does that?
As like, here's a bit more colour and Ripples as the clean one.
Yeah.
They're the ones, they're not the ones I've probably used and I say music, people are going to go, well, where's your music? Because there kind of isn't any from me. There is music coming from me, modular music, if you like.
Yeah.
But they're the two I use the most when I'm just reaching for. That could be that it happens to be about this far away from the Mordax data where I put modules that I'm demoing.
And
if I move the case around, it will probably
But you're
change.
never dissatisfied when you do it.
No,
like,
no.
that sounds shit. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Favourite modulation source? Maths.
No, I only got a maths about 2 months ago.
God. Your credentials have been
I bought one just to
PM,
say
you
I'd had
PM
one.
for maths.
I did. I use the Octo controller a ton.
Yeah, yeah. That can do basically everything.
I use the cubic contour a lot.
Yeah.
As just envelopes, LFOs, Batumi. And again, I'm not
Quite want a Batumi. That's the 4-channel
LFOs.
clockable sort of.
All
right.
Yeah, to take it as that because I can't quick answer these.
VCA.
For a while, until I got sick of how it clipped a bit, probably IntelliGel UVCA.
Yeah.
It doesn't clip nicely in exponential mode.
Clips.
I like the variable response though, linear 2 expo rather than a
Make it
switch.
work to things. VCA is a bit of a boring one, but they're important. You can have to know.
Yeah, I use the ADE 50 a fair bit.
Yeah, that is actually that's Justin's like sort of OTA. It's like I actually
sounds really good.
It does sound like
AM's really good if
Yeah.
you want to get into
It's
audio
like,
rating it.
and there's 3 in a very small space, and it's done with this slightly kind of high-end approach. Like it's like
discrete analog, so it kind of there is a bit of a sound, but
yeah, you've sort of
it's
got
not driven. It's
No,
not
no.
like it's an obvious sound.
and it's almost more just for like it's almost like reassuring yourself that you're putting something through something decent, if that makes sense.
Well,
like,
you
it's
take
just-
all these synths, the 09 whatever, you can't just say it's the filter that makes it sound good. It's the sum of the parts.
and very much like the CP3 is the proof. Like the Moog modulars sound like they do because of
Well,
their
like
mixes.
Alan's stuff, modelling the model HH stuff. I know loads of people that go, I've got 3 of those oscillators in the filter. Run
You
it
need the
through
mixer.
his VCA
Yeah, and
or the mixer.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
You can mix on the filter
Well,
on that.
the
but-
Model D absolutely drives internally. That was actually pointed out during the development of the Mini Moog, was like, we are clipping or we're driving this mixer. Should we change it? And they realised they shouldn't, because that was contributing to the vibe.
Yeah. But yeah, quad VCAs and stuff like that, super useful. But I don't know. I don't like...
Having the ability to change like linear and exponential response is quite a big deal. Because I've had problems with certain modulation sources like clipping out or not working very well because things just didn't respond. It gets into that boring shit of Eurorack that people don't think about, where stuff just isn't gain staged well against
Yeah,
each
you
other.
need to think
The
about gain
ranges of
stage.
like voltages, like the filter needs 10 volts to open fully, but you can only supply 5, and daft stuff like that, where you just don't even realise it's a problem until you actually try to make stuff work.
Yeah, you need to think about gain stage kind of every way. It gives us this thing, just plug it all in, it'll all work. There's some VCAs that need 10 volts to open up. Most
The
envelopes
Bafaka
don't
one,
peak.
unfortunately, the mixer, his mixer does need 10 volts. I don't know if it can be modified, maybe, but
I don't know, but
you need to be aware of
most
that.
envelopes
If you're,
don't peak at 8.
Exactly.
Or if it's going to open at 5, but your envelope's 8, you're clipping either the top of your CV or the audio, depending on the circuit.
Yeah.
That's annoying. I understand, and maybe I'm giving some kind of secret Illuminati groups thing away here, but I think companies are talking to each other about some kind of standard thing.
Which is, they
Great.
need to. They do need to. It's just
I hope.
just let's all make it 8 volts.
The
people.
Happy Nerd in triple VCA is great because it's 6 HP, 3 VCAs, bias and CV attenuate. It's using those dual concentric pots, those like stacked
Oh, yeah, I've
pots.
seen those. Yeah.
Handy.
Yeah. Lastly, what is your favourite effects?
Most use reverbs, the ZDSP, Halls of
False
Valhalla.
Valhalla. And you were going to say.
Yeah.
I
Delay.
haven't got that.
I have a real
Why does he
kind of
not
like,
make a bloody module of like halls? I just make a stand. I mean, it's just get a ZDSP, but
yeah, but just even if it had like 2 controls on it, but it was 8 HP, that'd be amazing for something to run
I would totally
that
have
level
that.
of sound.
Reverb is my like that.
Yeah,
kind
that
of
as
gives me
well.
that world.
It doesn't sound the same.
Yeah,
Very
it's
different
not
sound.
the same. Yeah,
The DLD though, I think he's the kind of like biggest man crush.
the Dold.
the dulled. I've said it a lot of times, but just the way it skips between looping and delaying. Kev, I forget his last name, Kev Holmes came and did like a 3-module challenge thing at one of the events, and he had braids and I think a clock source and a DLD, and he just kept looping, sound on sound looping. He's like, I'm going to fire this rhythm in and create a bass drum pattern, quickly got braids to a kick. Right, that's in there now, locked. I'm going to quickly make a snare, and just built up basically those 2 modules and something to trigger braids in the first place, and then clock the looper in time. And that was really cool.
Well, that in like a form of a loop thematically has brought us back to the start of the thing.
Very good.
That's it. I've asked everyone about the future of music technology, and we should talk about that.
The future of music technology.
What is the future of music technology?
I hope interfaces, and not because I don't like traditional interfaces, but I hope we kind of move away from, not from anything particularly, but I want to see new instruments. Like Nick says this, Nick Batt on Sonic Talk a lot. It can't be too new because people won't like it.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm starting to find, we talk about a Moffen's Eve Stargazer, the fact it's no connectivity, so you have to just hands-on drone with it. I like instruments that just I like instruments that almost like force you into something. I like the restriction, and I'd like the different,
like the Lyra.
Yeah,
like is a good one.
Yeah. Don't have a Lyra, but just you have to just use it how you use it.
I've got his delay module, the Durac module. If I've been trying it, is absolutely wild, and it just gets into mad drone feedback loops. So you're just like, you have to embrace it. You can't use it like you can, but it is best used in a non-traditional way. So it's new.
For modular, it's kind of not really the question, but I really like the kind of patch program approach, which is like the Surge thing, the dual slopes.
Where you patch something up to create.
Yeah, I've just done
the way you patch it.
Some stuff with a Topper Brillo sport modulator, and that's very much like it's patch programmed. I like, 'cause it really forces a load of learning. I had the sport modulator for ages and didn't gel with it, and then only recently, when I forced myself to use it for some upcoming content stuff, I was like, this is really good. But it's the Surge thing. It's like the dual slopes are linear, but if you patch the output back into the CV input, they become exponential. Because the curves, if you CV that with that, it's going to kind of make it bend. It's just that.
I understand.
But it's like, so then it's like, so that could be triggering itself at audio rates, and I've got like feedback in a wave shaper. That's really interesting. But I don't know, interfaces being different.
Do you mean you just
keyboards out for everything? Yeah.
And what would it be?
I don't know. I think controllers have done a lot for that. People being able to engage and play music that just would get nowhere with a MIDI keyboard, for example. Pads, knobs, buttons. Yeah.
That have been allowed people to make music who never could, like me, basically. Can't play a keyboard, but I can program a quantizer and like a sequencer. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like standards to all line up in modular somehow. I feel everyone would all of a sudden have a richer experience.
Where everything works better together.
Yeah, the peaks of modulation are made for, you don't have a VCA that needs twice the voltage of your other one to open. Because these are the things that trip everyone up, myself included. This isn't responding right, why? And you don't necessarily know why.
I tried to build a DFAM in modular and could get most of the way there, but not truly, because everything was at weird different voltages, what expected different levels. And tonally was different too. But it was a good example in like how that instrument works, because everything's just so,
I think the point, trying to answer the future and music technology thing, I think the point we're at with things like, just generally thinking of almost society as a whole, Patreon, the fact that people will be like, I like what this guy does, I'll throw him a few dollars every month. That amazed me when I went from just having, people just, and it's almost like people, I'm sure you get it on your Patreon as well, they almost don't want extra content.
This is exactly what it is.
Are you here for the bonus extras?
Yeah.
No, I like what you do, and I want you to keep doing it.
Yeah, and that is amazing.
And I think that mentality tied to things like the Lyra, or there's a lot of interest in Seat Lombard stuff at the minute, these more kind of out there designers. I think we're at a point where they're hopefully being supported enough Modular is a great example of it. There's enough kind of bonkers, weird Euro designers and modules that I hope they can live off this stuff and keep doing things.
Yeah. And pushing the envelope.
What's coming, I don't know, but I think we are at a point where the people are being supported by this now. Synths in general, that wacky new Soma, isn't it? The Lyra 8,
yeah,
Soma Labs.
Yeah,
that drum thing that they've got coming.
Yeah.
Would that have sold in the 90s?
No, probably not.
That might have bankrupted him trying to.
He may never have wanted to try,
and never have done anything. Yeah.
But the success of the Lyra and everyone's readiness to absorb things like that.
And Kickstarter as well is a good example of that. People are ready to fund stuff.
Yeah.
And have tangible stuff and experiences. And
Yeah. And it allows people to try experimental things like that granular synth that's coming out and stuff. There's a lot of kind of nutty things, like things like the Skoog or whatever it's called. It's that sort of thing you hit with pads. That's like it's like a sort of. It's not really, it's not necessarily a professional music instrument. It's more for like accessibility and learning. But things like that can be created because funding becomes made available, where otherwise you'd be looking for a big market. And also probably that manufacturing costs are down. It's easier and cheaper than ever to have things manufactured, that you can have PCBs made very cheaply in China, and you can do stuff yourself. You can do stuff with local businesses so that stuff can get made more easily. Yeah. So it will continue. We're going to get weirder new things, but we all have to support it and buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's happening. I think that is, it's not like this, go support your local butcher, otherwise we'll only have to get from supermarkets. I think it's kind of, but the bigger companies are thriving as well. We're at a nice time.
Maybe they could start doing some weird, like Roland doing a weird granular. Well, they did the V-Synth, actually. So didn't do very well, I don't think. Oh dear.
Yeah, but it would be nice if, the bigger synth companies to try it. It's maybe too much of a risk for them to not stick to the kind of traditional paths. But you imagine that level of kind of expertise applied to something different.
Yeah. I just don't know if they're able to be agile enough, because there's too many people and there's investors, there's boards to convince.
Yeah.
Whereas a small company of one person, two people.
But if it keeps kind of changing, maybe we'll see something. I don't know.
First, we're going to have something new from you.
Something new from me.
Something innovative.
No, rehashing of existing stuff.
But in a new way. In a unique package.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
Great.
Right, thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coffee.
It's all right, mate.
All good.
End.
Blimey, heck, and indeed worms. There you have it. There you have it. What a good chat that was. That was also, interestingly, the least edited of any of the podcasts that I've ever recorded. I did not cut a single second from it. And I hope that's a good thing, as far as you're concerned, looking back. And not that I should have cut a load out. Because, kind of as you heard, Ben's just like, he's just an ideas machine. He is just sucking up all of the mix and other music production knowledge info and putting it into his grey matter and regurgitating it for our benefit. So I hope you found it instructive. I definitely have. And I think, as I pull the sort of takeaway, because there are about a million different things. I like that thing about jazz, like, it's a while back now, but the jazz reverb thing, where you've got like a source on the left, and then you've got the reverb panned hard right, and then you've got another source on the right, and then it's reverb panned hard left. Like, that's clever. Like, why have I never thought to do that very simple thing? Maybe you've been doing that, but I certainly haven't. And because there is a multitude of things, I think that the takeaway from me, and it's something I think of actually pretty much whenever I speak to Ben, is like, keep learning shit. Like, especially mixing a record is telling me that, where I realize so hard that I've so many more things that I'm yet to master. And, if you've been doing something for 20 years, you might feel like you've kind of reached a level of competence. But, you haven't necessarily, because there's absolutely no guarantees that you've been spending your time productively or in a sort of healthy way. It's one thing to do something a lot, and you could argue that by making music you're practicing and you're getting better at it, but there's every chance that all that you're really doing is getting better at one variety of music making. You're just reinforcing the same pathways that you've had over and over again, the same pathways that you've been using, that you're only strengthening them, and you're not really forging new paths. I have read about that before. I can't remember where I read. There was someone talking about like real, true experimentation and practice should push your boundaries. It should be a case of doing things that you're not good at doing more and more, and not just repeating the things that you are good, because you're never going to grow. And that sounds obvious, but certainly I can speak for myself where, when I make music, I've absolutely fallen into pathways of doing things like habits, with using certain bits of software, certain plugins, certain sounds, certain instruments. When I go to a synth that has a certain feature set, I know that there are certain things that I can do, and I know they'll give me immediate gratification, and that gives me like a little buzz of serotonin, but it's not new. It's not what I've not done before. It's what I have done before. And so it really will require conscious effort to push your boundaries and to practice at the things that you suck at, because that's not fun. I've also been thinking about just needing to learn to play the frigging piano, which is a thing that I can find my way around. I can program melodies. I've been doing it with a mouse. Certainly on this project, I can hear what I want to happen, but I've got to just use the computer to make it happen. Well, why can't I just make my hands do that? I should just learn that skill, because it will be worth the pain. And so it's this idea, we all know this, and it's the reason why I think we sell ourselves on synths and modules so easily, because every new piece of equipment is the promise of some new working scenario that might just be the magic bullet to, musical nirvana, whatever that means, So, but I think it's what Ben's sort of, chat to Ben, and you realise that there's so much of it is technique, and there's so much, all it is technique. We all know on paper that any mastering engineer, talk to Nathan Moody about it. It's not about the gear, it's when you're hiring a mastering engineer, you're hiring the mind, the ears. That's what you're paying for. It doesn't matter. They could be using stock plugins, like Ben talks about as well. Like, you will get like the best mastering engineer will make the best record with the worst, with standard gear, if they know what they're doing, and if they are truly experienced, and if they truly, truly have the knowledge, which they've gleaned the hard way, from getting it wrong and understanding what right really sounds like. So all this is a long-winded way of saying, keep learning shit, and particularly force yourself to admit what you really aren't very good at, and try and learn that shit, because that's actually what's going to make you a better musician. I think it's time. I want to thank our sponsors, Signal Sounds. I want to thank you, Nathan Moody. Welcome, and thank you for mastering my record so beautifully. More on that in a bit. For now, it's over to you. You're the best.